Ramaswamy.
We're going live now.
I'll
All
try
right,
and,
it says
try
we're
and be
live.
serious.
I'm gonna watch.
I'll try.
All right. Jeez, it's a little bit slow on my end. I might just turn off my webcam if it keeps being slow.
I would
But
probably, yeah.
let me just
Streamline
check.
things.
I'm gonna check the live stream from my TV to see if it's working okay. Just to double check this. Do the little troubleshooting. Let me see.
I wasn't.
It's a little bit slow. Okay, my webcam's not too bad.
Okay.
Alright, I guess we'll start.
We'll see. We'll have to do some troubleshooting probably on the fly. But,
Yeah. Alright, well, I'll start the video. We'll start
Alright,
watching. Is
sounds
the
good.
screen share thing working?
I can see it. I don't know if it's playing, but we'll
I
see.
haven't started it yet, so.
Alright, there we go. So, yeah.
Alright.
See if she works.
Okay. Is it working?
No.
It's not playing?
Oh, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is.
Alright, you see Mr.
Hi,
Peterson?
everybody.
On.
I'm
Suffering from
very
the-
happy today to talk with Vivek
I'm getting audio, so that's
Ramaswamy,
really
who
what
has
matters.
just announced his
Audio is the most
candidacy for
important.
the American presidency.
Yeah.
And is going to, well, hopefully change the political landscape in doing so. Vivek is an American business leader and New York Times bestselling author of Woke Inc., Inside Corporate America's Social Justice Scam, along with his second book, Nation of Victims, Identity Politics, The Death of Merit, and the Path Back to Excellence.
I would say,
Born and raised in Cincinnati, Ohio.
What's up?
I was gonna say, I would say maybe we could discuss some background on him, but like, I guess that's what Peterson's about to do right now, so.
Yeah.
We'll just watch.
We'll have Dr. Peterson do it. He's a doctor, a PhD in clinical psychology, so he's probably better than me at explaining, you know?
That's facts, yeah, and he's been doing this kind of stuff for a long time. A lot longer than any of us, you know.
Exactly. So I'll let him take it away.
Alright.
He
I'm
often
very curious
recounts
about
the
this man,
sage of
though.
What's up?
I'm very curious about this man. He sounds interesting.
Yeah. You'll find out a little bit. I've watched about 30 minutes of this, so the beginning part I'm kind of familiar with. But anyway, I'm going to start it.
advice from his father. If you're going to stand out, then you might as well be outstanding. This set the course for his life. A nationally ranked tennis player, valedictorian of his high school, St. Xavier. He went on to graduate summa cum laude in biology from Harvard, and then received his JD from Yale Law School while working at a hedge fund. He then started a biotech company, Roivant Sciences, where he oversaw the development of 5 drugs that became FDA approved. In 2022, this is an important side note, he founded Strive, an Ohio-based asset management firm that directly competes with asset managers like BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard, who use the money of everyday citizens, that includes you, by the way, to advance environmental and social agendas that many citizens and capital owners disagree with. That's a far more important issue than you might think, and we're going to discuss that a lot as we proceed through our conversation today. Well, hello, Vivek, and everyone watching. It's here on the YouTube platform. It's always good to have everybody's time and attention. Vivek Ramaswamy, who I'm talking to today, is running for president, which seems to be quite the preposterous thing to do for anyone, I would say. This next 2024 election is going to be some interesting contest, as far as I can tell. We're not going to have seen anything like it, and the fact that you threw your hat in the ring, I think, is part and parcel of the whole show. So let's start by just exploring why it is that you decided to do this, and we should do that. Why did you decide to do this? And what is it that you hope to accomplish by making this run? So let's start with why you're doing it.
So you know some of the journey I've been on over the last few years, but I think that's what led me to the doorstep. I've been addressing for the last few years this merger of state power and corporate power that together do what neither can do on its own. And part of me has long believed that the Republican Party in the United States is behind by 40 years, right? Reciting slogans they memorized in 1980 when the real threat to liberty today is different. So I've taken on the woke industrial complex in America through the books I've written, through traveling the country, most recently taking on the ESG movement by starting Strive last year. And that's where my headspace was. I did not think I was going into politics. I thought that I wanted to actually avoid the limiting shackles of partisan politics. It just felt so constraining. I thought of running for the US Senate. I decided not to do that. I said, no. I want to do this independently as an independent voice, thought leader, author. And then, look, I successfully built a biotech company before. Let me put those skills to work by starting Strive. That was where my exclusive focus was going to be. And I'm proud to say, I think we are already having major impact on the market through my work at Strive, and even just through putting a spotlight on the problem. But I got to be really honest about this. And this was the realization that dawned on me after, years into that journey, is that it does take two to tango. Okay. And what I mean by that is the top-down version of this problem, the cynical exploitation of corporate power and state power to shackle the human spirit, I think is only half the issue, because that only works if there's a culture that's really willing to buy it up. It only works if there's a populace that's buying up what they're selling. And to me, I think that requires every one of us to look deeply in the mirror and ask ourselves, what is it about us as a people that wants us to bend the knee, or that makes us want to bend the knee to the powers that be, that wants us to embrace these new secular religions?
Can you pause it for a second?
Yeah, what's up?
So you think he's referring to, have you heard of Noam Chomsky's concept of like manufactured consent?
A little bit, yeah.
Consent.
You can elaborate a little bit.
Along those lines.
You want to just like briefly kind of summarize it again?
So if my memory's correct, I haven't read up on his. I think he wrote a book on it, but I haven't like read the book itself. I've read a couple excerpts from it and some analysis of it, but my understanding of this concept of manufactured consent is that the entire culture and system is designed around getting you to buy into the game, buy into the fact that there's only two political parties, buy into the fact that corporations are always going to have their hand in money, or have their hand in politics, buy into the fact that money is always going to be in politics, etc., 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 right? And that's what continues the cycle of power that we're currently in.
Yeah, I think that is kind of what he's describing.
You think that's what you're referring to? Because that's definitely like kind of sounds like what he's describing. Because
he goes into it more too.
All right, but I'm saying he brings up a really good point. Like, what makes the population so willing to just kind of like bend the knee, as it were, or just be like, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna vote this person, and maybe it'll work this time, and then they're like, that doesn't work. So next time, like, okay, well, maybe.
Well, I think part of it is just comfort, right? It's comfortable to think that the way that we conventionally deal with politics is going to solve our issues, so that it's comfortable to think, okay, I can vote for somebody that's going to bring hope and is going to bring change to my country. There's a sort of like, that's conventional way of like a democratic process, right? And we're comfortable with the idea that we can change things through our vote rather than like playing a more active
role. We're just voting for the same parties, right? Like how people will swing back and forth. They'll be like, oh, well, the Republican didn't do what I wanted them to do this time, so this Democrat must be doing what I want them to do this time. And then they'll just swing back and forth and back. And that's how we get, 48 years, it's a different party. Every 48 years. It just swings back and forth.
Yeah, it's this idea that, like, so, I mean, if you just look at the uncomfortable reality and the uncomfortable truth is that so many of us in America have views that fall outside of the limitations that each party kind of provides us, and yet there's no representation for that. So if you look
or they have so much crossover. Like, most people have so much crossover in what they believe. Like, they may be pro-life, but they're also
a socialist,
pro-gay marriage, or they're a socialist, or they may be fine, like, all for abortion, but that one thing, like this one, like the economics or something, is the hang-up, right?
Yeah, like they're pro-abortion, but they're also pro-gun, right?
Exactly. Like, there's most people have quite a lot of ideological crossover between our two parties.
And that's the thing. So, like, you take, like, a parliamentary system in Europe where you have, like, 10 different parties and you have to form coalition governments. Then you have a lot more cooperation behind these kind of niche political views. And in the United States, you don't have that, right? You have two major parties. You don't have the concept of coalition governments. See, with a coalition government, you have to find, like, let's say you're more center-right, but then you have a more right-leaning party, and then you have a more centrist party. Sometimes you're going to have to make a coalition with that more right-wing party and that centrist party
in order to form a functioning government, right?
Exactly.
Instead of like what's happened over the last 16 years is we just got into two separate sets of gridlock from different sides. Like one party controls the executive branch, the other party controls the House and the Senate.
Right.
And then nothing gets done for like 4 to 8 years. Sometimes it's like 6 years. Like just nothing gets done. That's what happened under Obama. As much as like I wasn't, at least now looking back, I'm not a fan of him. But like that doesn't matter because at least he could have tried something. But
that's
two
another
parties
thing. When you have only 8 years,
such a refusal.
Well, it's like you only have 8 years to make change, right? Even in like the parliamentary system.
Well,
you look at like Angela Merkel.
8 years if we decide to keep you on.
Right.
It's really 4 years.
8 maximum.
4 guaranteed if you win, and
right.
then you have to have done a good enough job, or be able to scapegoat the problems that happened onto something else, so that you can get reelected.
Sure, but even like in a liberal democracy, like look at European countries, like Angela Merkel. Like while I disagree with her politically, she stayed in power for a long time.
Yeah, she's held power for
So she was able
for like a decade.
Right, so she was able to get stuff done. Even though I disagree with her politics, she got stuff done. She did what she intended to do. Yeah, so like as much as I disagree with her, I can't fault that she said she was going to do something and she did it, right? And that's because she had more time to do it. So even in a parliamentary system, usually the term lengths are longer. Another thing that's good about
another thing about parliamentary, my understanding of parliamentary systems is that the term lengths are as long as your party is in power and as long as your party wants you to be prime minister.
It depends, right? There's different types. I'm sure that's
at least the way the UK works, which is the parliamentary system I've studied the most.
Gotcha.
It's typically how it works. That's also, however, why in the case of UK, they over the last 4 years they've gone through 3-4 prime ministers.
Well, recently it's been kind of a tumultuous time for the UK. Yeah.
But they could also keep the same prime minister for like 15 years.
Sure.
Margaret Thatcher was prime minister for a long time as well.
The Iron Lady.
Because her party was in control for a very long time.
Yeah, and I want to get back to the video, but really quick, just really quick on parliamentary systems. One of the things...
I'm a tangent haver.
I know, it's all right. We'll get through this eventually. But really quick before we move on, I just want to mention something about the parliamentary system that's interesting, right? So how it works is, let's say you have 5 candidates, right? Right?
Yes.
5 candidates. Yes. One of those candidates might get 30% of the vote initially out of those 5 candidates, but then what they do is they have a runoff election between the 2 highest voted candidates. So let's say that 30% guy is really polarizing, right? So he's let's say he's an extremist and he's polarizing. So he gets the 30% of that vote, but then once it becomes him versus someone else, then the moderates might come together and vote for that person. So I think that's an interesting dynamic to have.
It's having that system is far more effective than the system we have in the United States, because the system we have in the United States is first past the post, which just means the first to get enough points wins.
Right.
That's it. And that means that which is why a first past the post voting system mathematically will always lead to 2 parties.
Right.
Every time. Because as soon as you start voting for smaller, more independent candidates, you're taking away from the 2 big parties, and you might agree mostly with one, but not enough to vote for them, right? And because now you vote for the independent guy, the party that you agree slightly more with, it was going to lose.
And the other thing with that is like, since the way that American elections are with like the electoral college, it's all localized. So to just get a seat in the Senate, you need a senator in one specific region of the country to get votes in that specific region. Yes. So like the Libertarian Party could get 10 million votes, but it doesn't matter if those 10 million votes are spread out
across.
Right. Yep. So you need like 10 million votes in like California, for example, or Utah. So like the only times we've ever seen like independent or libertarian like senators have been in like the Midwest, like, or not Midwest, but like the, what I mean, like Utah, those sort of states where the
less densely populated states. For the most part.
So, but because politics are so localized, it doesn't matter about the popular vote you get for your party. If you don't have localized if you don't have a localized presence, then you're never going to get into Senate. You're never going to get into Congress. And that's what you said, first past the post system, you pretty much mathematically are going to get 2 parties.
Yep, pretty much every time. I've seen some people run like simulations of it. It's super interesting to watch.
And this is great stuff, but we
Anyway,
still got an hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
So
and I have to get up at like 6 in the morning. So let's keep pushing.
PT?
No, room inspections.
Oh, nice. All right.
Yeah, bro.
I'm about to start it.
And that wasn't quite a problem that I was going to be able to address, even through market action in taking on BlackRock or the ESG forces in capital markets. And that's really when it dawned on me that there was no better way to drive a cultural revival in America than to successfully, and successfully is an important part of this, but then to successfully run for president. And the whole premise of my campaign is actually to define a national identity. Answer the question of what it means to be an American in the year 2023. I do not believe we have a good answer to that question in this country. I'm on a mission to deliver an answer to that question. And my basic premise here is that our absence of that answer, that is the black hole at the center of our nation's soul. That is what allows wokeism and gender ideology and climatism and COVIDism to fill the void. These are secular religions that prey on that vacuum. If we can fill that vacuum with, say, a vision of national identity that runs so deep that it dilutes these other agendas to irrelevance, that is how we win. And I believe that there isn't a candidate in this field, I believe, who's quite up to that challenge. I'm not sure I am either, but I do believe that I'm going to give it the best shot that we have, which is why I'm running.
So, really quick, and I don't want to take too much time up here. But I totally agree with that. We don't have an American identity.
I think we've discussed this before.
Oh, yeah,
I think
countless times.
And I think that I would agree with them. That is one of the biggest issues
absolutely.
at the moment, and it's very undiscussed because we don't even think about it anymore. We just call ourselves Americans and we move on.
Right.
Because we think that it's like gives us an identity, but it's not an identity in the way that Germans have an identity.
Right.
It's not an identity in the way Brits have an identity, or Scottish people have an identity.
But they're always going to have an identity that we won't have, just by virtue of the fact that we are a multicultural, multi-ethnic country. So we're unique, right? We are essentially an imperial country. So it's not going to be the same anyway. But yeah, it is.
No, it doesn't have to be like the same style of the way they do it. However, it's the simple fact that they have a national identity and culture to rally behind. And the UK actually has a similar issue to us.
Growing issue, yeah. Not quite as much as us, but it's
no, ours is pretty bad.
Yeah.
Ours is pretty bad because we literally have nothing.
Yeah.
Like what does it take to be an American culturally?
Right. But just going off of that
citizenship, like
yeah. Well, just really quick, right? So he kind of elaborates on this more later, but he'll it's like the void that's left behind when you have all these past means of identifying the country, like whether it be culture, religion, even just patriotism, family values, the kind of traditional American values that have been like present in the country for like 200 years. Though when those things are kind of put to the side, then there's like this void of meaning, right? And this is something I've talked about before and we've discussed.
Yeah.
So he'll elaborate more, so I don't want to take too much time talking about it. But just one last thing I want to say. Here's one of the main reasons that a guy like Vivek is not going to win, because he is honest and he's not claiming to be someone who's just going to fix everything right away. He's being honest and he's saying like I'm going to try my best, and he's being intelligent and he's articulating his thoughts well. Yeah. That's not what wins.
It's a shame that such an articulate and pretty clearly like honest and integral perhaps, or like he seems to have a lot of integrity and honesty.
Yeah.
It's a shame that someone like that's definitely going to lose.
Yeah, and that's sad, right? But that's just how it is. Yeah. Like the average voter is not smart. They appeal to emotion, right? So they're going to appeal to a populist or someone that's backed by the financial establishment. They're going to back those guys because it's convenient, right? It's not convenient to actually listen to someone's thoughts and hear them say, we have issues, and I don't even know if I'm the best person to do it, but I'm going to try my damnedest. And I just love that authenticity and that transparency. So I really respect that. And like
I really respect the authenticity. And I have a hope, one of those foolish hopes in my heart.
This guy's only 37, so maybe next 2028.
Maybe, but I have the hope that enough Americans are really, because more and more Americans, especially younger Americans, are way more savvy to the bullshit, to the lack of a better word, right? The complete political scamming that's been going on for years, decades. Right. And my only hope is that he could potentially rally enough of the politically savvy people to get enough of a vote.
Right.
to get his foot in the door at least, right? To
Yeah.
to at least give him a scare this time.
Yeah, show him that like we're not buying the bullshit anymore.
Yeah, because he won't win. It's so sad.
Yeah,
but
maybe he gets
I'm
enough
very
votes
happy
that we
to
start
see.
Thinking about something.
Maybe I'm very happy to see someone doing this. Though.
Yeah,
someone who is willing to be articulate and honest. I mean, the last time someone, I don't know, the last political candidate I saw kind of do this was like, oh man, what's her name?
Oh, Tulsi Gabbard?
Yeah,
she's okay.
She's pretty good. She's pretty straightforward and honest like this, and then she kind of just got like...
To an extent, I think she was more honest than like the rest of her field for the most part. I would say that the last honest politician, or not politician, but the last honest presidential candidate, and I don't agree with his politics, but I respect him as a man, is Andy Yang.
Yeah, he was pretty good.
Yeah, so like I don't agree. Yeah, I don't agree with like his politics necessarily, but I respected him as a man, right? And his transparency. Yeah. And like I said, we should like keep going forward because we're going off a lot of tangents. We're only like 8 minutes in.
That's to be expected. That's to be expected, though. Yeah.
But yeah, no, it's if we like the rest of the interview, he's got a Slack team online to help him with his campaign. I might join that if I continue liking what I'm hearing. So I'm about to start it. All right, start it.
Okay, well, you brought up a lot of very complex issues in that description of your motives, and so I'm going to walk through them one by one to unpack them for everybody, because you said the Republicans are 40 years behind, and I think that's probably true of organizations like the UN as well, and 40 years is a long time given how much has changed in the last 10 years, and what that means is that the average person who's watching and listening to this is also behind and isn't even aware of what acronyms like ESG mean or why they should really give a damn. Mm-hmm. I just interviewed the CEO of the national, what's the organization? State Treasurers Organization. It's the financial officers organization. Yeah, there's 28 states.
Yeah, I know them. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they're pushing hard back against the ESG movement, but we talked about in that podcast the fact that people don't even know what the hell that means. Now, you opened your description, essentially, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but from my perspective, you opened your description of your motives with a statement about what essentially boils down to a kind of fascist collusion. And what we're seeing is an amalgam of power that's corporate, which of course the left-wingers complain about, that's government, which the right-wingers complain about, and then of media, which everybody complains about, and rightly so. And there's this idea that seems to be reigning in the upper echelons of the power structures that we're facing an apocalyptic emergency of such magnitude, whatever the emergency happens to be, that they should be conveniently ceded all the power. And one of the fronts upon which that battle is being fought is the ESG movement. And so do you want to walk through that for everyone?
Really quick, before he walks through it, I don't know what ESG is, or I didn't know what ESG was before this either.
I just looked up the acronym, but I don't really understand what it means. But I looked it up real quick just to see what it
stands for.
Yeah. Environmental, or is it environmental, social, and governance?
Okay. And really quick, one thing I just want to say before I start up again. So I get what Jordan Peterson's trying to say when he's talking about the amalgam of power and like he's comparing it to fascism. Now, yes, in a fascist system, you have a cooperation between the state and the corporation. The difference is, in a fascist system, the state is more powerful than the corporations, and the corporations are doing the bidding of the state. I think the opposite is true in the United States. I think the state is doing the bidding of the corporation. So I could be wrong, obviously, but I disagree. I mean, that's
my understanding of it. I would say that corporations have more control
than the politicians.
Than the government.
So I disagree with Peterson's description of it being fascist. It's not fascism. Fascism, the state overpowers the corporations.
I could go with that, but I would say that he did a very good breakdown of it's an amalgamation of 3 different forms of control that literally everybody complains about, and nobody wants controlling us.
Right.
And yet we're all too busy disagreeing with each other to do something about it.
Yeah, I'm not disagreeing with the issue. Obviously, corporations, the state, and the media are all working together to push their narratives and push their sort of, they're further their interests. I'm just saying I wouldn't call that fascist, because I think the corporations are at the top of the hierarchy there. Yeah. I think the media and the politicians are doing the bidding of the corporations. But anyway,
absolutely.
Let's keep going. We're a lot of pauses. Yeah.
Just to bring them up to date.
Absolutely. I mean, this has been something of my obsession over the last several years, and not just as a commentator, but as a doer and as an entrepreneur too. So the issue with the ESG movement, it stands for environmental, social, and governance factors. It's designed to sound boring for a reason. My general rule of thumb is, if it sounds like a 3-letter acronym that bores you, that's a good sign that you should be paying more attention, because it was designed to bore you. What this whole game is about is using private power, using capital markets to accomplish through the back door what government could not get done through the front door under the Constitution. So I'll tell you what it is, and then I'll walk through the history of how we got there, because that's also pretty important too. What the essence of the ESG movement is, what it does is it uses the money of everyday citizens, Americans, but Canadians too, Australians and Western Europeans. It uses the money of everyday citizens to invest in companies and to vote their shares in ways that advance one-sided progressive agendas, environmental and social agendas, that most of those people do not agree with, that most of those people did not know were actually being advanced with their own money, and which don't advance the financial best interests of most people whose money is actually used. So what does that mean? Think about yourself saving in a retirement account or a 401k account or a brokerage account. You think that the person who's managing that money is exclusively looking after your best financial interests. It turns out they're not. They're also looking after advancing these other environmental and social goals. Who are these institutions? They're asset management firms like BlackRock or State Street or Vanguard or Invesco or countless others that have signed a pledge to say that they're going to align all of their underlying companies with the goals of the Paris Climate Accords, with net zero standards by 2050, with modern diversity, equity, and inclusion standards. And those 3 or 4 firms alone manage about $20 trillion, maybe even a little bit more. That's more than the US GDP right now in the hands of 3 to 4 financial institutions. But they're not using their money to do it. They're using the money of probably most listeners to this exchange right now, people watching this. Good chances that their money, their retirement accounts, their brokerage accounts are being used to tell companies like Apple to adopt racial equity audits that Apple's board initially did not want to adopt, to tell companies like Chevron to adopt Scope 3 emissions caps, which I can talk about what that means, but that Chevron did not want to adopt, and that most people watching this probably didn't want to force on Chevron either, but their money was used to do it anyway. That's what this ESG movement is all about. So how did we get here is actually a really important question. And a lot of this began, there were 2 big milestones seeing the supercharging of this ESG movement in our economy and in capital markets. The first one, which I think of as the Big Bang, that really set the whole thing, for all intents and purposes, into motion, was the 2008 financial crisis. What happened in the 2008 financial crisis, and by the way, I had a front row seat to this. I got my first job in New York at an elite hedge fund in the fall of 2007. The fund I worked at got an honorable mention in Michael Lewis's book, The Big Short. This is my first job out of college. So this is fun stuff for me, right? A lot of people lost a lot of money on Wall Street. I didn't have any money, so it didn't matter to me. It was more of a learning experience, which was a pretty rich one. But I had a front row seat. What happened was, in the aftermath of the 2008 crisis, Republicans, it's worth remembering this, Republicans in this country bailed out the big banks, which I don't know what your view is, Dr. Peterson. I view that as a major mistake. It's a cardinal sin. The Bush administration and Hank Paulson, a CEO, an alumnus of Goldman Sachs, used public taxpayer funds to bail out Goldman Sachs while letting his competitors fail. This was crony capitalism all the way down. And the left actually had a point in this country. Occupy Wall Street was born. And what they said is, look, if you're going to play that crony capitalist game, then you know what? We're going to play our game. We're just going to take money from your wealthy corporate fat cat pockets and redistribute it to poor people to help poor people, because that's what we on the far left want to do on the Occupy Wall Street movement. But right around that time, there was a fissure in the left-wing movement in this country where there was the birth of this new, let's call it the woke left. Barack Obama had just been elected the first black president of the United States. There was a lot of cultural currents in the US that said, well, wait a minute there. The real problem isn't quite economic injustice or poverty. It's really racial injustice and misogyny and bigotry. And by the way, climate change. This is post-Al Gore's Inconvenient Truth. This actually presented the opportunity of a generation for Wall Street to say that, no, okay, guys, we'll make a deal with you. We will use our corporate power, use our money, really your money, to applaud diversity and inclusion, to put token minorities on corporate boards, to muse about this racially disparate impact of climate change from the mountaintops of Davos after flying there in a private jet. We'll do all of these things, but we don't do it for free. We expect the new left to look the other way when it comes to leaving our corporate power intact. And so they defanged Occupy Wall Street. Most people don't even remember what Occupy Wall Street is. It went by the wayside. And that's how the birth of this new, what I've sometimes called woke industrial or ESG industrial complex was born, where Wall Street said that, you know what, if you can't beat us, join us. And that's exactly what happened. So that was the first big
Do you think it was that conscious? Or do you think that that was the consequence of 1,000 micro decisions? You know, I mean,
the latter.
It's easy to see us. Okay, the latter.
It was the latter. Yeah, I mean, this is not a smoke-filled room where there was some sort of meeting.
What's up?
Okay, so I think he's about to say this, but I would say I would agree with that. It was the latter. So many times, there doesn't need to be a formal conspiracy.
It's like an organic
to
conspiracy.
behave exactly. It just so happens that all of these people who hold all of these powerful positions, both in the economy and in politics and in media, all have the same interests.
Yes. No,
when they see an opportunity
agree.
like the woke movement, they're just going to utilize it as an opportunity.
Right. And it's interesting, right? So, like, I mean, you heard what he said, right? So basically, essentially, Goldman Sachs was bailed out and their competitors weren't, right? Now, to me, that's a clear sign that the corporations have the power there, because clearly certain politicians had a vested interest in Goldman Sachs. Maybe Goldman Sachs had them as lobbyists. Maybe they were paying them. Maybe they were funding their campaigns. Because there's a reason why they helped Goldman Sachs and not the other financial companies. It didn't benefit the common people. It didn't benefit the state. It only benefited that specific corporation, and then by extension, the politicians representing those corporations, right? So it's pretty straightforward. And then, like what you're saying, I believe 100% most conspiracies, not all, but most conspiracies are organic conspiracies. They're not
absolutely organic. They just happen.
Yeah. And that's clearly what happened here.
I say there's almost no backroom conspiracies. They almost don't exist.
Right.
There are a couple. I'm sure there's a couple out there, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure. Like, you look back at history, they've definitely happened before.
100%. Yeah.
But in this case, especially in this case, and especially with
on
that
this big scale too, you know,
on such a big scale, it just so happens that all these global major players, they all have the same interests.
Yeah.
And of course, they're going to do what's in their interest. One thing leads to another, and we're here where we are now.
Yeah, and going off of that, right? So, I'm just going to put it out there, right? Just because the corporations are co-opting specific movements doesn't mean those movements are necessarily wrong, right? So, for example, in this particular instance, out of the 3 issues he mentioned, so he mentioned racial issues in companies, he mentioned like gender issues, he mentioned the environment, right? Like, I consider myself an environmentalist. I believe that man's rapid industrialization needs to be curbed, and that we need to like redevelop our relationship with nature, right?
We need to do something.
What's up?
Because we need to do something because we're fucking it up.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean. But I understand that they're using it to further their interests. Therefore, I can't support their policies concerning the environment. I can be an environmentalist and they're not work with them.
Genuine in their support or their beliefs. And
so how do you know they're really doing it?
I think perhaps the most beautiful example is Pride Month.
They just every
when all the corporations tack a
rainbow,
rainbow, right? Or maybe they're clever and they're Skittles and they go white and black. They go black and white, right? But they all in some way do that, but just for the month, right? Every month, who fucking cares? Doesn't matter to them.
Have you noticed though? The Middle Eastern countries don't do anything on Pride Month. Mercedes-Benz Saudi Arabia doesn't do anything. Wonder
well,
why.
Of course not. Wonder why, right? I wonder why they wouldn't.
They're just appealing to like the people that they know they're going to be able to use this.
They're appealing
socially.
to the market. They're appealing to their demographic.
Exactly, the social issue.
It's not a genuine support. Maybe small companies have genuine support for such movements.
Right.
Right. But these large corporations, they have no genuine support. They are conglomerates of financial interests. They can't even. I would argue they can't even have any interest that is not their own financial gain.
Absolutely. No, you're
based off
right.
the way they're structured, like they just can't.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not going to comment on the other two issues because I don't know enough. Well, I know a little bit, but I don't know enough that I can confidently put my foot down on either of them in support of one way or another. But in terms of the environment, I will say
I think the other two are just really, really complicated.
Yeah, but
and there was no clean solution, and there was no clean side to hold.
Right. All I'm saying though is like I care about the environment. I'm like I'm one of those like in the early 1900s in Germany they had this movement of boys that wanted to go out and be with nature and just like return to the land, and I think it was called
absolutely.
I forget what it was called. It was like the let me see. Just for fun, I want to look this up. German nature movement.
But I think the
Wandervogel. Wandervogel. It means the wandering bird.
I think that the fake activism or corporate activism, right?
Yeah.
I think that's like the more used term. Is the corporate activism is such a good example of what he's talking about. Because it is.
It's the amalgam of power.
It's an amalgam of power, and the companies are only doing it for profit.
Exactly.
It's the only reason. And they're not even really doing it. They just say they're doing it.
Right.
Yeah, it's the same with like all these billionaires, right? Like, have you ever seen great example. Have you ever seen Bill Gates justify his use of private jets?
No, but I can imagine how that might have gone.
It's wild. If we have some time at some point, maybe I'll come over for a podcast.
We can do that on a stream or something.
Yeah, because it's crazy. He justifies his constant year-round flying of private jets.
Right, ridiculous.
Yeah, and they all do. Every one of them does.
Yeah. Remember when the whole Greta Thunberg thing? Like,
she was flying around in a private jet to go to all these activist things.
Actually, well, early on she was
doing that. I don't remember.
She was sailing on a boat.
She was sailing on a boat.
So we'll give her some props there.
I'll give you some credit.
Yeah, later on, I think she fell into the whole, using.
It's okay because I'm advocating for the problem. It's okay because I support these things. I support like Bill Gates' whole thing is. I'll briefly cover it. He's like, well, I have a negative carbon footprint because I fund all these things because my organization does all this environmental work. I have a negative.
So because my workers, it balances out.
But then that argument, it's beautiful because essentially, you can apply that argument to anybody who has enough power and influence. Right. Oh well, my actions, they balance out, Senor Proletariat, Senor Peasant, Mr. Peasant. There, but you poor you don't have enough money to donate to these causes and these technologies in order to balance out your carbon footprint. So no car for you.
Right.
But I get a private jet.
That's the beauty of hypercapitalism, right? The little
exactly.
man gets stepped on. But but basically all I'm trying to say though is like I consider myself an environmentalist and like the sort of almost like a nationalist environmentalist in the sense that I believe in the beauty of my country and I want to maintain that. But I also can see that like the left and the corporations are using this environmental issue to just further their own interests. So, like for example, the left represents more like the tech corporations and like the renewable energy corporations. So naturally, they're going to lobby for that as opposed to the oil tycoons. And they're both corrupt. Exactly. The oil tycoons are corrupt. The tech companies are corrupt. They're all corrupt. But
I think the ideological left.
Yeah.
Is with the new tech, and the green energy and all that stuff. However, the actual political left, so like the Democratic Party, for example, is brought out by the exact same oil tycoons that the Republicans are.
It's all just money. It's just like different businesses that are in contention with each other. So you take electric companies are fighting the oil companies. They're both rich. They just have different people representing them in politics.
Yeah.
So like they're both. It just so happens right now that because of environmentalism, there's more of an emphasis on renewable energy, and there's more of an emphasis on battling the oil tycoons. But the oil tycoons are fucked too. Both sides are fucked. So like I care about the environment, but I'm not going to pretend that the left really gives a shit. I'm not going to pretend like the oil tycoon guys give a shit. None of the corporations give a shit. At the end of the day, they further their own interests to make more money, and the little man suffers, right? So I'm an environmentalist the same way that the German van der Waal movement was. I want to connect to nature, create some strong motherfuckers. Let's rebuild some real humans, real fucking, troopers in here. Let's return to nature.
Back to this video. I would love to continue this, but
I know.
we should probably.
We'll talk about it on Friday. Or we can do more live streams too. Anyway, let's start.
The back of Goldman Sachs' boardroom on 85 Broad Street in Lower Manhattan. No, this isn't, and that's like the classical conspiracy theory. This isn't a conspiracy theory. It's just emergent reality, right? You watch it in slow motion. People need to understand when they think about what a conspiracy theory is that turns into reality. It's that if you just watch the camera reel in slow motion, it plays out in dangerously boring form. This is how the sausage gets made. So anyway, that was the first catalyst. And so what began as a challenge to the system, which is, as an intellectual or whatever, I always enjoy it. If I agree it or not, it's at least interesting to watch. Something that began as a challenge to the system, stakeholder capitalism and ESG, slowly became ossified as the system. And there's a lot of forces behind that. The rise of passive index funds played a big role, and that's a discussion I can get into another time or maybe later in this discussion. But a big then catalyst came out there was two big catalysts that came out. One was in 2016 and one was in 2018. The thing that happened in 2016, of course, is that Donald Trump was elected president of the United States. This created a seismic shockwave across the establishment class, both in capital markets as well as the linkage between business and politics. And what they said is, okay, wait a minute. This game may not be played the way it's supposed to be going forward. If political leaders like Donald Trump are going to break the system, then we, the business leaders, need to exercise our authority to step into the void instead. And then they were vindicated, or so they thought, when Trump pulled out of the Paris Climate Accords in 2018. Not a lot of people realize this. That was a big event. That is the event that threw kerosene on this ESG storm. And even the people who are complaining about this ESG movement need to understand where it came from a little bit better than they do. This was a big deal. So this is what then caused CalPERS, the California Teachers and Pension Retirement System, and other big allocators, the people who give BlackRock and State Street your money. They started to say that, look, if political leaders are not going to step up to the occasion to address the existential challenges we face, like global climate change, then business leaders need to do it instead. Larry Fink, the CEO of BlackRock, started saying similar things, that we have to earn our social license to operate. And that's really what caused this ESG thing to spread like wildfire, was that event of pulling out of the Paris Climate Accords.
Okay, so now with that move, you tie the corporate response to, say, Occupy Wall Street at the end of the 2008 financial crisis with the climate catastrophe. And so let's talk about the climate catastrophe for a moment or two, and also define stakeholder capitalism, because the narrative that's insisted upon by the woke left, let's say, but also by these woke capitalists, is that the emergency that confronts us on the environmental frontier is so cataclysmic that any and all emergency measures are not only thoroughly justified, but morally required. Now, I have a problem with that theory psychologically as well as technically. And so psychologically, I've been trying to figure out how you separate the wheat from the chaff on the leadership front, especially in the face of a real emergency, because emergencies do occur from time to time. But here's a rule of thumb. Everyone who's listening can try this out for themselves and see what they think. But if the emergency you're confronting terrifies you so badly that you're paralyzed into immobility or tempted to aggregate all the power to yourself and become a tyrant, then you have defined yourself as insufficient for the job. You should be able to maintain a calm head regardless of the impending emergency, because there's going to be emergencies. And if you become a tyrant during an emergency, then you're a tyrant. And so that's the psychological issue. Even if there is an emergency, we shouldn't be aggregating power.
What do you say?
there's an interesting perspective on it. I think that I suppose I could agree. I suppose you shouldn't just become a tyrant if you can't handle a situation democratically.
Yeah, you gotta be a good. Yeah. No, I know. I understand where he's coming from. Yeah.
It's an interesting way of phrasing it, though.
Yeah. I'm gonna keep going a little bit before he finishes. Let him finish his thought.
Into an elite.
Yeah.
And then there's a second element too, which is, what bloody emergency precisely? You know, I've talked a lot to Bjorn Lomborg, for example, and many other people I would say as informed as Lomborg, and there's no evidence even in the IPCC reports themselves that climate change is, first of all, entirely man-made, because it's not, and second, even if it is, there is no evidence whatsoever in the IPCC reports that there's going to be some apocalyptic turning point in the next 50 years that justifies untold trillions of panic dollars being spent while we simultaneously destabilize our power grids and increase the cost of electricity by up to 5 times and make ourselves, at least in Europe, much more reliable or much more reliant on Russia. And also throw poor people into poverty and risk the fossil fuel infrastructure that feeds half the planet. Because people actually also don't understand that ammonia is made out of fossil fuel, and ammonia fertilizer feeds 4 billion people. And so anyways, you said 2008 Wall Street is guilty because of the bailouts. The lefties push them hard on the ethical front, and rightly so. They decide to turn to ESG, but then that's also amplified by this sense of apocalyptic climate doom. And so what's your formulation of the environmental challenges that confront us now? How do you construe that?
All right, really quick. Kush says, that suit looks like it inspires tyranny and disrespect.
No disrespect. Did I snazzy suit,
dead
but
serious. I will say this, right? So as much as I love Dr. Peterson because he's gotten me into, like, you know, part of my philosophical journey started with Dr. Peterson, right? Jordan Peterson. But I really disagree with his politics concerning the environment. Yeah, it's just ridiculous. So like I don't disagree with him in the sense that maybe. So I don't necessarily think that like our climate is set towards a point of doom, right? Cataclysmic doom, but that shouldn't matter. I think I'm not an environmentalist because I'm afraid of that. I'm an environmentalist because I want to preserve the beauty of my nation, of my country. You know, the soil that I was born upon. I love my country so much, and the land that I've been born upon, that I want to maintain the beauty of it. I want to maintain the beauty of the forest, you know, of the animals that grew up here, and you know, I would do anything for my country and the land that I come from. So that's the reason why I'm an environmentalist, not because, you know, I'm afraid of cataclysmic doom. It's because I love my country so much, the United States of America, the land that I was born in, that I would do anything to maintain the greatness of our country, which ties into the environment, right? I'm
in sort of a similar boat, but I not quite, because the way I view it is that I'm not concerned about climate change. I am concerned about pollution.
That too, yeah.
That is right. I'm far more concerned about plastic and chemical pollution.
Absolutely.
In our oceans, in our forests, in our land, because it's poisoning. Like, it's poisoning everything. Yeah, we don't know what it's going to become of it. That is to me a far like that's the deadly serious issue that we should be attempting to address. Not, I think our fossil fuels could, yes, to some extent they're absolutely damaging it, and the relentless pursuit of that is absolutely can absolutely damage the environment and even destabilize it to some extent. But I have sort of a very fatalistic view on such things. However, what we are doing in the case of plastic pollution and landfills, that's a problem. A problem that we don't have a solution to, and a problem that could poison the earth itself, like the soil itself. And as soon as the soil begins to die and begins to become infertile, that's what I'm looking for, like infertile and essentially poisoned by the microplastics, that's sort of game over.
Yeah. No, yeah.
And I don't think we're at that point. I don't think we're going to be at that point for a while. You know, I think we have some time to find a solution. I'm far more concerned with that than I am with a climate shift because that shit happens. Like, we're probably causing it. We're definitely
we're nearing the end of an ice age. We're still technically in an ice age right now. Yeah.
I mean, you could just look at the I've seen this in person. So in Rome, there's a port city that is now miles away from the shore.
Right.
Because during the Greco-Roman era, the sea levels were far, far higher than they are today.
Wait, higher? Or...
Higher.
Okay, interesting.
Yeah. The Earth cooled off. Well, actually, the Earth cooled off, and now it is warming back up. And this reflects in... Yes. This reflects in... Because during the Victorian era, there was a mini ice age.
Gotcha. I didn't know that.
Yeah. So, this reflects if you look at the ice core data. This never happened.
I don't know what Kush is going on.
Dude, I don't know.
You're giving me some like LSD trip.
I think it's pronounced Kush.
My brother.
Kush.
No, because Kush should be a K. That's Kush.
Ooh, you're right. It might be Kush.
Yeah, come on, bro. But
Kush?
All right, we should definitely move on soon. But this last thing I wanted to say was like it's funny because you think Greco-Roman. Nice. Made me laugh.
Greco-Roman.
But just one last thing I want to say is like you think of technological advancement is like always good, right? Like technological advancement can't be bad. But look at plastic. Plastic has arguably done more bad than good, right? So
it's an amazing material to work with.
Sure.
But we just have no means of getting rid of it.
Right.
And even recycling it isn't that effective.
Yeah, we should send it to space, bro. Send it to space. Let's create some asteroids.
As long as it can get out of our orbit, right?
We'll shoot it.
That's another problem. Is we have a shit ton of garbage. We just have garbage floating around our planet.
That too. I was kidding.
Sorry, I'm in a far more serious mood. But you're right. We should just create some garbage asteroids. Shoot it into the sun, man. That always works, right?
Well, let's hear what Vivek has to say.
So I have more to say about the ESG story, but I gotta pause on what you just said. I just gotta pause on what you just said. It was really some really good stuff in there. Okay, so I just need to go. I'm going to go one step further than you and draw a linkage between the psychological critique and the technical critique because they're related, right? So the first thing you said was a humble and powerful point, which is even if there is some sort of existential apocalyptic issue, you should not want to entrust the people who are going to then wield tyrannical force to address it, not to mention the fact that the technical issue is itself a completely artificial one, right? It is grounded on false premises that deserve to be called out. And I can call those out. Bjorn Lomborg, Alex Epstein, others can call them out. We can go into all the details of that. But the point I want to make is that those two critiques that you just offered, spot on as they are deeply linked. And the reason is you were almost too charitable in that psychological account, in that actually the psychological account explains the fact that the entire climate agenda actually has nothing to do with the climate. It's not like this was a tyrannical response to a threat. It was the creation of an artificial threat to exercise tyrannical power itself. Okay, it's a religious cult. And so I've said this numerous times, I think the climate religion has about as much to do with the climate as the Spanish Inquisition had to do with Christ, which is to say nothing at all. It was really just about power and dominion and punishment all the way down. And I can basically prove that to you in a short amount of time, right? If the climate religion
do it.
Really, I mean, just I'm gonna, to avoid going on for hours, I'll just pick a couple of tidbits, but we could go on for hours, but the couple tidbits we can just start with are, so one is, if you really care about carbon emissions as the end all be all, okay, first of all, you'd be delineating which kind of carbon emissions matter. I don't subscribe to the tenets of this religion, but I understand this religion. I think it's worth understanding a religion even if you're not a practitioner. Even if you subscribe to this religion, there's a difference between methane leakage and carbon dioxide. Well, methane leakage is far worse in places like Russia and China. So then it should be a mystery that you want to shift carbon production from the United States, where you tell companies like Exxon and Chevron to stop producing, to places like China, like PetroChina on the other side of the world.
Yep.
And by the way, this is exactly what the ESG movement, it's like the apostles of this church, right? So BlackRock is like an apostle of this Spanish Inquisition style church. BlackRock forces companies like Exxon and Chevron to drop oil production to meet net zero standards by 2050. Yet literally some of the same companies buying up those same projects on the other side of the planet are PetroChina, who BlackRock is a large shareholder of, without telling PetroChina to adopt any of those same emissions caps. This is nuts if you think that you care about reducing carbon emissions. And it's not even, as I was alluding to methane emissions before, it's not even net neutral. Methane, even if you subscribe to this crazy religion, is 80 times worse for global warming than carbon dioxide. So it's not even net neutral, it's worse. So that's the first breadcrumb that there's something else going on here. The second breadcrumb that there's something else going on here is that same movement, certainly its apostles in the ESG movement, that are so hostile to carbon emissions, is also hostile to the best known form of carbon-free energy production known to mankind, which is nuclear energy, right? So that's the second little breadcrumb that suggests there's something else going on here. And the problem with nuclear energy in a nutshell is that nuclear energy might be too good at solving the alleged clean energy problem, such that it doesn't solve for the actual agenda, which is delivering equity between the West, America in particular, and the rest of the world to catch up. That's really what this climate is all.
And delivering that power that we've been talking
about. Of course.
It's hands of the proper elite.
The grand inquisitors of our time, right? So that's really what's going on.
So really quick, I don't want to take up too much time talking about this, but also say hi to Gimli. Gimli's out here. But
hi, Gimli.
But all I want to say is that so he's right? So like these moral issues, it's funny when people use something that has become like a moral absolute to further their interests. So in the Spanish Inquisition, it was getting rid of like Muslims and Jewish people from Spain in order to like quote unquote like, you know, get rid of the heathens in
purify the land, right?
Right. But clearly that wasn't really what it was about. It was really just about power and creating like a more homogenous more mono-ethnic area, monocultural area, right? So, but what I want to point out is same thing with climate, right? Same thing with social justice. I completely agree. The social justice, climate, it's being used to further a specific interest. It's being used for more power to corporations, for example. But it's also important to realize, like I've mentioned before, just because it is being used for power doesn't mean the root of the issue is necessarily wrong. So that's all I wanted to say. Anyway.
Yeah, I would agree. But I think it is essentially like I don't know. I would almost relate what they're talking about back to, not even back to. We haven't even mentioned this, but to what we've done with manufacturing. How essentially we've exported all of our immoral labor to other countries.
Right.
Because now now our shoes are made by essentially slaves in China.
Right.
And Malaysia, and Vietnam, and the child labor we just exported it because it just costs too much here. So almost all our manufacturing is like horribly unethical.
Well, it seems like
we don't need to see it. So
it seems like the hyper-capitalist system depends upon the exploitation of other areas in order for your native population to live in greater comfort, right? So the reason why people in America are so entitled to pleasure, so like you look at college students partying their time away, doing drugs, drinking, all that comes because of the exploitation of lower wage workers in like what you mentioned, like China, Vietnam, etc. Because we're able to exploit that lower cost labor, we're able to live with all these luxuries that aren't natural to the human condition. And I don't want to take up too much time discussing that, but I'm just saying, like, I get where you're coming from, so I'm going to keep going because we're only 26 minutes in.
I know, but there's a lot to cover here. There's a lot to talk about.
No doubt.
They cover some real deep stuff. I'm trying to take some notes. So
yeah, me too. If you ever see me going on my phone or on my computer, it's because I'm adding stuff.
Well, you can't see me, but if you could, I would be.
I'll see you on Friday when we do the actual in-person podcast.
Hopefully, yes.
Yeah, we'll have a good time. All right, I'm gonna start it.
All right, go for it.
Those are two stunning points, and I want to lay them out philosophically for a moment, just so people get what this means completely. So let's say that we do buy the propositions of what Vivek has been calling the climate religion. We'll get back to that term later. So if we do buy that, then we're going to make the assumption that the fundamental existential crisis facing us is one of pollution, and that can be reduced in complexity to carbon dioxide emission, and maybe methane and a couple of other greenhouse gases. Now, I don't accept any of that, and I know you don't as well, but we'll give the devil his due. If that's actually the driving factor, then the all fundamental actions and perceptions should be directed towards minimizing, let's say, carbon dioxide output. But the first point you make is, well, we're making it very difficult for Western countries to use coal and to explore for fossil fuels, but we're making it very easy for China to do so. And since we all share the same atmosphere, and China and other, terribly governed countries have way worse environmental regulations, they're not even in the same universe. All we're doing is substituting relatively clean fossil fuel for relatively filthy fossil fuel. And then, you added that additional decoration, which is, well, isn't it also convenient that companies like BlackRock happen to own huge shares in exactly the Chinese companies whose interests they're promoting? And so, that's kind of, so what that means is that by the measurement standards of the advocates of the climate religion themselves, their policies are not only a failure, they're actually positively counterproductive, just like they have been in Germany and the UK. And that's a subtle mystery on the fossil fuel front. But then you have the blatant mystery, which is the second thing you pointed to, which is, okay, boys and girls, we can pretty much solve the bloody carbon dioxide problem like overnight with nuclear. And
yes,
we have small nuclear plants now, and we have nuclear plants that are way safer than they were 50 years ago and that can be built at a modular level. And so why do you oppose them? And, well, that brings us into the religious issue, I would say, because this is not so much a pro-planet agenda designed to bring about harmony with the natural world as it is an attempt to...
So, DP... Not sure what they mean by that, but
Vivek will dismantle, humiliate Trump.
And
I think he's basically saying Vivek is smart, and Ron DeSantis. Yeah, see that this is the problem, DP, is that Vivek is smart, and that's exactly why he's not going to be successful, because he's too smart for all these normal voters who are just appealing to emotion.
He's clearly remarkably articulate, logical, and honest, right? Which means that if he gets put on the spot on a debate stage, he would do the honest, genuine thing of saying, perhaps I don't know.
Exactly.
Or perhaps I was wrong. But that's the end of your political career.
Right. But he's too good for this world, basically. But hey, we're gonna, if we like the rest of this interview, and if through my research, Vivek maintains his position as a good guy, I'll do what I can to help the boy out. But anyway. Continue.
But
simultaneously,
I would say technically you're correct.
Thank you.
No, the commentator.
DP is correct. Sure.
Yeah, DP is correct.
Yeah, hugs and kisses, DP.
Yeah, DP's great.
Did I mess up?
On the planet, combined with this underground desire to accrue all tyrannical power into centralized elite hands.
That's exactly right.
Okay, exactly. So with that, let's talk about, you've insisted a number of times that the climate narrative is a religious or quasi-religious structure. So why don't you, I've got some thoughts about that, which I'll share eventually, but I would like you to lay out why you use that terminology specifically.
Yeah, so I mean that in two senses. Worse is the sense in which it is a religious institution gone awry. And then the second is in which it fills a psychological need for religion and God in the everyday person. On the first of those, just as you were laying out the philosophical framing of it, I was reminded of actually one of my favorite stories about Christ, actually, which came from not the Bible, but from Fyodor Dostoevsky's book, The Brothers Karamazov, Brothers K, in his chapter entitled The Grand Inquisitor, actually. And it tells the story of how Christ comes back to earth during the 15th or 16th century or whatever in Seville, Spain. He's walking the streets, performing miracles, and then the Grand Inquisitor, a person leading the Spanish Inquisition, spots him on the street and has him arrested. And the whole climax of the chapter is the dialogue between Christ and the Grand Inquisitor. And what the Grand Inquisitor tells Christ is, look, we the church don't need you here anymore. You are supposed to be a symbol that helps us do our work, but your presence here actually stops us from getting our work done. And he sentences Christ to execution the next morning. Swapping climate for Christ, which really is what's happening in the psychological minds of people who are buying this religion up, which I'll get to in a second, but that's also what's going on here, is the climate's just an excuse. And in fact, once you get into a discussion about actually addressing carbon emissions, say with nuclear energy, they get very worried. So they're sentencing nuclear energy to death because that's their messiah and their savior, right? You said you wanted to actually get rid of carbon emissions. Well, you would welcome the second coming of Christ, the second coming of the climate solution of nuclear energy. No. They sentence it to death because, as the Grand Inquisitor told Christ in that story, your presence here actually impedes our work. You're just supposed to be a symbol for us. So in a certain sense, it has a religious quality in terms of the church that protects its own turf, even from the very God that it tells its parishioners to worship. Now, the second question, though, is why are the parishioners worshiping at all? And I think this gets to the heart of, in a weird way, my candidacy for president of the United States, even though we're in deep philosophical terrain here. I just think we're in the middle of this identity crisis where we are so hungry for purpose and meaning and identity as Americans. And it's probably true for much of the Western world too, even beyond America, but we're so hungry for a cause at a moment in our history when the things that used to fill that void, faith is one of them. Faith in God is a big one.
Nietzsche said God is dead,
also a big one. National identity is big.
Yes, he did.
Family is also pretty big in this category. Even hard work, actually. We can get into that later, but these are sources of identity, sources of pride, sources of grounding. They're grounded in truth. And the way I look at us as human beings, I mean, this is the first personal reflection, right? We're like blind bats. We're lost in some cave in an abyss, and we send out these sonar signals for our echolocation of identity, right? We can't see where we are, but we deduce.
What's up?
Shitty bats, right? Like our echolocation is garbage.
Yeah, a little bit.
Like a crippled bat.
Like cringe crippled bat versus based
based fruit bat versus
exactly, bro.
Cringe vampire bat.
Yeah, bro. I eat my bananas on the daily. Damn, I'm crazy. I gotta do a freestyle live stream eventually. Anyway, sorry. We'll continue.
Where we are by bouncing off the signals we send and get them back as sources of truth. Okay, I send a signal out. Family is one source of identity I get back. God is another source of identity I get back. My nation is another source of identity I get back. My hard work, the things I create in the world, these things, we deduce our identity, and it tells us, even though we're blind, where we are, lost in that abyss. But when those things disappear, we send out that signal, and then nothing comes back. And then we're lost. And so then we start grasping at artificial sources of that identity, racial identity, gender identity. Where do you think this bizarre gender ideology happens to have arisen from? Climate, disaster, catastrophism. That's a source of identity too. Climate instead of Christ. And so it's no accident that we see all of these secular religions arise at the same time. Why do we see wokeism at the same time as we see radical gender ideology, racial wokeism as gender ideology, as climatism, as COVIDism? It's a symptom of that deeper abyss that we're lost in.
And so
that's what I care about.
Now you broke this out in two ways. You said...
Really quick, this is just a brief thing, but it's interesting how he's talking. Basically, I think what the essence of what he's talking about is with fractured identity, especially in the United States, developed countries, and the Western world, we see a replacement of the sort of traditional means of identity and meaning and purpose, which are like he said, faith, patriotism, family values, hard work, and it's being replaced with these social movements, right? And this is something I've reiterated so many times in past videos, is that when you take away these traditional forms of identity and meaning and purpose, ideologies, social movements try to replace that, but they're not successful in replacing it, which leaves this void of meaning, right? So trying to replace real religion, for example, despite religion's many flaws, trying to replace religion with social movements and ideology is just not going to be successful. Unless you can really tap into the human condition. And I don't think
But then at that point, if you're really tapping into the human condition, that ideology would draw from family, nation, culture, something. It would draw from some basic, fundamental
human nature, right?
Human attribute that we all can gather around.
Yes.
Because that's those traditional sources of meaning and value that he's referring to. I would say pretty much all of them derive from a fundamental human experience of being either a part of a tribe, and that's the nation, or being a part of a family, and that's, being a part of a function. That's self-explanatory, right?
Yeah, it's like the train.
Or
So like I've
religion,
about,
which is just a common belief structure with a common values.
Right,
and
I've talked about this before, like identity, right? It starts with yourself, your family, your neighborhood, and then it goes to your country, your culture, then it goes to humanity as a whole, and life, and like forms of identity. Religion, for example, why religion's so successful, it's something that unifies life entirely. It unifies humanity, it unifies plants, animals.
It is a uniting set of views, beliefs, and stories that everyone who buys into can utilize to interpret and guide them through their entire life.
Right.
That's why it's so good. That's why it's so effective, and it's been around for as long, for time immemorial. Right? That's a fancy way of saying
time immemorial.
For as long as we fucking know.
Yeah.
Religion has been around.
Right. And that's why it's such a success. It's rooted in culture now and traditions. Really quick, I'm gonna go use the restroom, but my audio is coming from my mic, I think. So I'm still gonna be able to hear the video because I got my headphones in. But in case somehow my
I'll try and fill the air here.
Yeah, and just don't. If somehow you can hear me peeing, please tell me because I don't want to make chat.
Mute yourself, bro. Just mute yourself.
I don't know how because I'm on stream. Just let me know in case you can hear it.
Just mute your mic, like through Discord or something.
My mic's here. I'm going to the bathroom. Should be far enough away. Anyway, I'm starting it again.
Okay.
You're the entertaining one now.
Oh,
I love you.
Responsibility on me.
Said there's an offer on hand from above. So
I was going to let it play.
From the ESG and climate ideologues.
You can't hear
but
me,
there's
right?
an also corresponding need in the population that's associated with a kind of emptiness.
Yes.
And so, okay, and then you also talked about the Brothers Karamazov and the notion of the Grand Inquisitor. So I want to address all three of those points. So the first point is that the developmental psychologist Jean Piaget pointed out that the last stage of cognitive development, as far as he was concerned, was adolescent messianism. And what he meant by that was that people between the ages of 16 and 21, when they're undergoing their last great neural pruning, by the way, they sort of settle into their adult identities. They have to catalyze them. And the way that human beings catalyze their adult identity is by identifying with something beyond themselves. And so in the archaic situation, that would be with tribe, for example, but also with the traditions of the tribe, right? Rather than just the people that are there presently now, with the ancient traditions of the tribe. And they'll be initiated into that. Now, there's a messianic urge that comes along with that, which could be expressed, would be expressed in modern terms as something like the desire of young people to save the planet. Okay, so that's a true psychological hunger. Now, what's being offered by the radical left to address that messianic need is something like, it's very simple, and this is part of the problem. It's like, well, to be Christ, to be the Messiah, you have to face down the apocalypse, right? That's the last judgment. The apocalypse that currently confronts us is environmental, and environmental apocalypses have confronted us throughout the entire history of mankind. So we have an ecological, what would you say, a psychological predisposition to be alerted to environmental catastrophe. Okay, so there's an apocalypse, it's environmental. The environmental apocalypse is a consequence of carbon. Carbon is a consequence of excess industrial output. If you adopt the radical left ideology, which is anti-industrial, then you fulfill your messianic mission. Now, that's on the positive side. The negative side is, well, you can also do it with absolutely no effort on your part, because all you have to do is oppose the right things. And it also lifts the moral burden from your shoulders, because instead of having to undergo a psychological transformation that would involve confrontation of all of your own inadequacies, let's say, to put yourself on the right path spiritually, you can just demonize whoever happens to be convenient for demonization. And in the radical left case, it would be anything to do with the industrial or corporate world. And you can put all the sins on the scapegoat's shoulders and you're done with them. And so that's an expanded vision of that messianism, right? It's this overwhelmingly simple solution to a very complex moral problem. All right, now on the identity front, you laid out a bunch of issues that I think are extremely relevant. So you know that people are struggling with their identities. And what's happened is they're also being offered a one idea fits all problem solution, which is, well, your identity is nothing other than your group identity. It's your sexual proclivity, which is a pretty pathetic identity. It's your ethnicity, it's your race, it's some group identity, which also takes the responsibility off of you, by the way.
Now, what's up?
So firstly, an actual point I could make on what he said was that he is essentially breaking out what pretty much every modern ideology does, which picks one facet of identity and makes that the entire basis.
Yeah.
My comment was that was a nice subtle diss when he said that basing your identity off of your sexual proclivity is a pathetic identity.
Yeah.
I would agree.
No,
I would have to agree. It's a pretty lame way of completely organizing yourself and structure around just who you want to.
It'd be similar to. It'd be like, imagine if your identity was based around how much sugar you like to consume per day. It's essentially what it is. It's tapping into basic human necessities, which are like sex and food, but then it's taking them to another level, taking them to another level.
Imagine forming your entire identity around the fact that you don't need any animal products.
Right? Yeah. Okay, buddy. You know that's the thing. You know that's the thing. Hey, I'm just gonna say though, like as someone who makes fun of vegans and they're kind of lame, the people are lame, but I don't think the movement in and of itself. I think it's good. Like vegans are good because it allows more meat for the rest of us. Vegetarians are good because the meat industry is
more meat for me.
Yeah, and the meat industry is unethical. I'm not gonna pretend it's not. Like it's. I eat steak like a lot. That's because I'm a base Sigma male, so like I just deserve more steak than everyone else.
You know, you need more steak than the others, right?
Exactly. So the regular laws don't apply to me.
Precisely. But we're above law.
I am above the law, clearly, as you can tell.
Clearly.
I don't have to deal with all this, the unethicalness. I need my steak to gain my protein and get my little boy gains.
On a more serious note, I would disagree with the concept that we shouldn't eat meat. Mm-hmm. But I would agree with the concept that our current means of acquiring said meat is horrific.
No, I back you up completely. Because think of if we grew our own meat, right? You would have to have a connection to the animal. You have to kill it yourself.
Little test tubes and stuff. Oh.
No. I mean, like make your own meat. Like imagine everyone
farm.
Yeah,
essentially, right? Agriculture.
You have to ration your meat. You can't just eat meat. You gotta
literally if you were just allowed to keep your own chickens.
Yeah.
That's it, bro.
And also, you gain a connection to the animals, so you're gonna treat them with more respect. You're not just gonna treat them like a business.
Exactly. You gain a certain level of respect.
Yeah, because you gotta take its life. If you don't have the balls,
especially when, bro, I don't know if you've ever done this, but if you've ever taken an animal to slaughter.
No, I haven't. Have you?
I have.
What's that like?
Only birds.
Okay.
To be fair, only birds. But I've taken turkeys, ducks, and chickens.
Ducks? I love ducks. They're so cute.
Meat ducks, yeah. It's okay. They're hillbilly cousins, which are the layer ducks. Yeah. They get to live, but the meat ducks now they gotta go. They're delicious though. But taking them to slaughter and then reaching into their pen and literally grabbing them up by their feet.
Yeah.
It definitely the first time I watched animals, not fish. Obviously they're fish. They're practically vegetables, but
that's not true.
Yeah, I know it's not true at all.
Sharks are very intelligent.
But they're so much more removed than we are to. It depends
on the fish. Because sharks are very intelligent.
That's fair.
They can
I don't even just mean intelligent. I mean looks.
Okay, sure.
Right, look. Yeah. And I know we're pretty far removed from a bird, but they're another terrestrial animal.
Yeah.
And then for the entire I was up on a 5-acre plot of land helping my aunt for a month. It was just a month. But I would get up every morning and I would take care of these birds. Mm-hmm. And then at the end of the month, it was their, I forgot what the proper term for it, but essentially their harvesting season. So, end of the year, they're going to wipe out all their meat animals. Mm-hmm. And so taking them out of the cages, grabbing turkeys by the throat and the foot,
brutal stuff,
dragging them away, and then watching them get their throats slit.
Yeah.
It was kind of whoa, it's an experience. I would recommend to everybody take an animal to slaughter and watch a butcher.
Well, I plan to have my own ranch one day, so I'm gonna kill goats and stuff. So yeah, we'll be neighbors.
Probably.
Base neighbors.
So. That'd be nice.
Did I tell you I'm gonna live in Georgia for a little bit?
Oh, Georgia? Georgia's a beautiful place.
You should move in after you get out. Because I'm going after I go out. You and your girlfriend should get married and then move out to Georgia.
Georgia, so.
Yo, there you go. We're gonna.
Or go to Jordan, yeah.
I'm gonna live.
I'm gonna be out there in like a couple months.
Okay, I was just there. But anyway, we'll talk about that.
Anyway,
later.
we're gonna distract. It was personal shit. So
exactly.
Back to the video.
Yeah. Oh wait, shit. Wrong spacebar.
Now, you might say, well, what constitutes a valid identity in contrast to that? And you've already pointed to a number of those things. So this is also where I think the psychological community has failed to a large degree on this front. Now, we're the heirs of a liberal Protestant tradition, socially and psychologically, and we believe that our identities are fundamentally individual and subjective. Okay, but that's actually not true, because your identity is nested. Now you pointed, so let's think of nestings, okay, because we could build a hierarchy that's a proper hierarchy conceptually. And this is a good way of formulating what actually constitutes a robust identity. This is where you'd get signal for those those forays
sonar
that you're putting out, those
sonar
tests.
signals.
The sonar, exactly. Okay, so look, a person has to be bound into an intimate relationship, and everybody needs and wants that. So that's the first level of social integration. And then the couple has to be integrated within a family. And then the family within a neighborhood, and the neighborhood within a community, and the community within a town within the state within a nation, and then the nation, let's say, into something approximating whatever web of international agreements is necessary to minimally keep the peace. Well, that's a subsidiary hierarchy of responsibility. And in Exodus, in the Old Testament book Exodus, part of what that book addresses is what forms of governance are necessary as an alternative to tyranny, so single top-down tyranny, the Pharaoh, or the desert, which is, completely scattered individuality. And the technical answer is a subsidiary hierarchy of responsibility. And so that means, as an individual, you have a responsibility, as a couple, as a family member, as a community member, and all of those. And then you can think of identity as the belonging in all of those hierarchical positions. And you can think of psychological health not as something that occurs in an interior space, but as the harmony between all of those subsidiary levels. So it's an emergent property of harmony and not something that's carried internally.
Hey Reagan, I know you're picky when it comes to skincare products.
Boo.
Alright, we're skipping ahead. And most replayed. So look, you see that? Most replayed is that little tidbit. Really quick.
Yeah, well, the nested ideology, he does a really, really good job of describing it.
Yeah, so did I tell you
that ideal...
Sorry, you go.
Go ahead. Are you going to say that you went to one of his talks, right?
Yeah, and he talks about this concept. He talks about Exodus and after the Jews had been under the Pharaoh's.
Yes, we discussed this. They wanted Moses to become a new pharaoh.
Right.
But the amount of conflicts he would have to mediate would be absolutely insane, which is how they ended up with the more solidified tribe structure that they did.
Yeah, the division of labor. It was Jethro. It was Moses' father-in-law.
Yeah, it was Jethro. There we go. His father-in-law.
Yeah. One person in charge of 10, those 10 people in charge of 100, 100 people in charge of 1,000,
exactly.
Right?
It goes all the way up. And then they divided out the functions of each tribe and what each tribe will be responsible for, and then you get all the other, you get the 12 tribes, you get your priest class, and so on and so forth. And it's especially stratified and described in excruciating detail in the Book of Numbers.
Right. And it's funny because we're going to do a podcast on order and chaos, right?
Yep.
And so the tour that Jordan Peterson was doing was called the Beyond Order tour, and it was essentially
Beyond Order.
Yeah, it's a tour for the book essentially, but it's basically talking about the balancing order and chaos. And just like you said, you have to balance the tyranny of the Pharaoh with the chaos of the desert. So just another little tidbit that we can incorporate into the.
It's another good analogy.
Yeah. Anyway, good stuff. I'm gonna start.
Beautiful stuff, actually.
Beautiful stuff, actually.
When you just described the desert versus Pharaoh dynamic,
that suit,
the separation, something clicked for me. Okay.
Yeah, well, it's a killer set of ideas.
Well, I mean, in a much more practical sense, for me, in something as mundane as a political race here. Okay, it clicks for me why I'm doing this, is that, yeah, you're right. You and I and others like us have complained about how the left has actually preyed on that vacuum by at least offering a substantive, even if false, fundamentally artificial set of identities to fill that void. But actually, I'm sick of complaining about that without critiquing the conservative movement. Where's the conservative movement in filling that identity with an alternative, right?
Facts.
We can do all the hand-wringing we want. Where are we? Over the last 10 years, where's our leadership? Where's the leadership of, for example, a conservative movement, pro-American movement, pro-national movement, pro-family movement, whatever you want to call it? These guys have been asleep at the switch while they've been watching the other side take advantage of this. And that kind of...
Well, not just that. It's worse than that. Like if you look,
they're participating in it in some ways. They're participating.
Well, it's the conservatives. It's the conservatives in the UK who've been putting forward the net zero agenda.
Exactly. Especially in Western Europe, but even some wings of the Republican Party in the US are their meek response is effectively participating in this. And this is where the analogy that it hit me when you're talking about the desert and Pharaoh is that we as a people are lost in the desert, and yet we're criticizing that phenomenon by still critiquing Pharaoh. Well, the Israelites are ready to go. Right. Many of them are already gone. Okay, that's where a lot of the grassroots movement that I'm leading already and hoping to lead is. We're already in the desert. We're still lost, though. We're not going to find the promised land by still criticizing Pharaoh. To the contrary, the longer you're lost, the more likely it is the people are going to say that I need to go back and bend the knee to Pharaoh. Actually, I want to be ruled by Pharaoh. That's exactly what's happening. So where is the promised land? And I'm not going to, this analogy is really to a weird place. I'm not going to claim to be a Moses figure or anything like that. That's beyond any of our pay grade. But I will say, when I laid out in this room the video where we launched this presidential campaign from right here in the front foyer of my house, we said that my goal is to create a new American dream for the 21st century. Okay, FDR had his New Deal. I don't agree with a lot of it, but FDR had his New Deal. JFK had his New Frontier. Where's the conservative vision of where we're going? That's what I call the new dream, the new American dream. It's not just about money. Yeah. It's about reviving our conviction in our purpose as citizens. What does that mean? The unapologetic pursuit of excellence. I can talk about what that means, but that's my vision. Maybe a different candidate can offer theirs. And if this Republican primary ended up being a competition of those ideas and visions, man, our country's heading to a good place, but that's what's missing.
Yes, definitely. Well, okay, so let's talk about the conservative issue here for a minute. So if you look at what temperamental factors predict political allegiance, the literature on that's quite clear. If you're higher in openness, if you're higher in creativity, and you're low in conscientiousness, you tend to move to the radical left, let's say. Mm-hmm. And if you're high in conscientiousness and low in openness, you tend to move towards the conservative front. And there's a constant dialogue between those extremes, because the creative people are necessary to make changes when changes are necessary, but dangerous otherwise. And the conservative types are very good at maintaining functional tradition, but are intransigent in the face of necessary change. And so free speech is actually the mechanism by which that conundrum is mediated. Because people who can engage in free speech can keep arguing about which traditions need to be carefully modified.
All right, that's a W take by Mr. Peterson there.
That's a major dub right there.
Yeah.
I would say that's an excellent analysis of how a healthy left and right wing political sphere should theoretically, hypothetically work.
It's order and chaos. It's the Apollonian versus the Dionysian, right? So essentially, the Apollonian side is the more ordered side. It's the more conservative, like well-oiled, just traditional side. And then you have the Dionysian side.
Don't fix what ain't broke.
Right. So the Dionysian side is more of a connection to nature, more of a connection to the human animalistic urges, and all this stuff, this sort of chaotic nature of humans. And that's order and chaos. Apollonian, Dionysian, yin and yang, whatever, right? So, good stuff.
You need that both. You need that both. That's a very good analysis.
Yeah. W take, JP.
And that there should be mediation between both ideas. That's another big thing, is there needs to be a agreed upon space and mechanism of debate, disagreement, and consensus.
Right, which is free speech in Greece, where yes. like this idea of the Apollonian, the Dionysian came about. In Greece, where this idea of order and chaos came about, they had the polis, and in the polis, it was essentially a forum for free speech. People would get together in a public area and just talk about politics, discuss policy. It was great stuff. So Jack Law, remember Jack's Law from
I remember Jack's Law.
Yeah, hey, Jack's Law, tell me about the unicorns. I want to hear more about the unicorns.
Yeah, I've got to hear more about those unicorns, man.
Jack's Law's goated. You know,
Jack's Law's pretty goated. That was a very fascinating, enlightened.
Yeah, he's too based. Dude. He's too based.
Super based take.
He's going to get taken down by the Matrix soon. The Matrix is going to send their agents. Yeah. Agent Smith is going to come for Jack's Law. He's too based.
I am kind of genuinely curious what he was talking about, though.
Yeah, Jack Law's.
You had me.
Jack's Law.
For a second. You intellectually bested me there.
Elaborate, my friend. Anyway,
feel free to elaborate in the chat. Yeah. I'll try and pay attention to it.
I gotta pee again, so I'm gonna play the video, and you're gonna comment.
Oh, you're gonna let it play? All right.
Yeah. Well, because like, what else am I gonna do while I'm gone? It's supposed to be awkward silence.
That's a good point. Unless I'm just gonna monologue.
You couldn't hear me when I peed, right?
No, I couldn't hear you.
Okay, good. All right, I'm starting it. I'm starting it.
He hears it all.
I'm starting it. Inshallah.
Okay, but here's the problem that it presents on the conservative front. So conservatives are not visionaries. By definition, the visionaries tend to tilt in the more radical direction because they have radical visions, and so the conservatives are always pushed back into a reactionary standpoint, almost always. They object vociferously to the excesses of the left, but because they're not visionary, they can't extract from their tradition an image of the promised land for the future. Mm-hmm. And I've been working with an organization in the UK that's trying to do something that's analogous to what you're doing, to lay out something approximating a compelling vision on the conservative side. I'll talk about one part of it, sure. Because I think it strikes right to the core, even of what we're discussing. So we spent a lot of time talking about families, so you have the individual, and then you have the individual in a couple, but the next order of subsidiary organization is family. And then you might ask yourself, well, what is a family? Now, the answer on the inclusive left is a family is any old organization of any sort. But that's so blurry that it leaves people with no guidelines. They don't know what to do, because if you can do anything, you have no direction. And so, well, we could say, well, a family fundamentally is a unit that produces children. And if you're not willing to buy that definition, well, then you could go develop your own definition of family. But it seems to me that there's something core about laying the groundwork for the emergence and proper rearing of children that's key to what constitutes a family. And then one of the corollaries of that is, well, if you're going to have children, you're probably going to need to have a man and a woman involved. Otherwise, it's extremely... Well, it's very difficult otherwise, and that actually turns out to be relevant when you're thinking about an ideal. So I talked to Dave Rubin about this, for example. So Rubin, who's conservative and gay, is married to his partner, his husband, Dave, and they went through the entire surrogacy route to have a couple of infants. And it was very, 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 very complicated.
All right, first of all, I just want to... a couple of infants. Not a couple of babies. They had a couple of infants.
Yeah. They had a couple of infants. They acquired a few. It's tactical acquiring.
Also, I just want to talk about... So, Jordan Peterson's definition of conservative, right? So I agree that conservatism is generally reactionary, but to say it's not innovative or radical, I just have to disagree with. So you take the German conservative revolution, which is essentially was the more, I want to say more moderate right. They were just a different right. They were a different right to Nazism, for example, right? They represented, for example, they were reactionary. Don't get me wrong. They were a reaction against liberal democracy, the sort of political changes that happened once the German monarchy, the Kaiser, was replaced with the Weimar Republic, replaced with a liberal democracy. So they were reactionary, but they also had a lot of innovative ideas. For example, so they were very inspired by Nietzsche. So most of their main thinkers were very inspired by Nietzsche. So Oswald Spengler, especially, who wrote Decline of the West, Ernst Jünger, Carl Schmitt. All these guys were highly influenced by Nietzsche, and they were highly critical of Christian cultural tradition.
Interesting.
And they were highly...
What ideological... What moral and value structure did they propose to replace it, or did they just seek modifications to the current one.
Basically, the German Conservative Revolution essentially advocated for a system of government where you have like an elite. Let's call it a political elite, but it was a militaristic elite. So they believe in the militarization of society. They believed in having like one leader, essentially, whether it be a monarch or just like some sort of dictator. They were against Christian values in the sense of, especially egalitarianism. They were especially anti-egalitarian. So they believed in Nietzsche was also very anti-egalitarian in the sense that not everyone should be afforded equal amounts of power in a society. Like I said, they were very militaristic. They were definitely about the virility of man in the sense that, you know, you have to maintain a sort of edge in society. They were very anti-materialist, anti-hyper-capitalist. They were very basically proponent of a natural human condition in the sense of masculinity, staying true to the human condition, which is that of war, that of constant struggle, suffering. It's very interesting. German Conservative Revolution is very interesting. I would look into Ernst Jünger, very interesting guy. Oswald Spengler, of course. But essentially, they were the right wing that was not the Nazis, because there's two major right wing movements in Germany at the time: the Nazis, obviously, and then the German Conservative Revolution. And unfortunately, the German Conservative Revolution was overtaken by the Nazis. Because, like we said, it's not the most intelligent people necessarily that come into power. It's just the ones that can appeal to emotion. And not to say the Nazis...
Well, they did appeal to an emotion.
Yeah. And it's not to say that... Sorry, what were you saying?
I mean, that was a major component of their strategy. I mean, they came into power coming off of a weak, financially broke...
Yeah.
And
it was just after the Black Monday, worldwide recession.
Oh yeah, I mean they came into power they began their rise at the worst point.
Yeah.
In the world's economic history, especially for Germany.
Sure, it's important to delineate though. Germany, I don't like to just completely write off the Nazi movement as a manipulation of the populace, because I'm not saying that there weren't smart people in that movement, because obviously any successful movement has smart people, but
yes,
they represented more of the just non-thinking class of society. So the reason I make a delineation, I'm not saying the Nazis weren't smart, because obviously they had to be smart to get into power, but the German Conservative Revolution was made up more of intellectuals, of the smarter people, so they appealed more to the intellect, to actual dialogue, whereas the Nazis.
But the mob does not want intellect, right?
The mob wants a scapegoat. Simple solutions, right? So the scapegoat was the Jewish population, other minorities. The Nazis were easy to follow because they had a straightforward path, whereas the German Conservative Revolution, they were nuanced, and they had actual debates about things that were more intellectual. So it's quite interesting. So I guess what I'm saying is I don't want to write off the Nazis. It's just obviously they were smart, but there were more intelligent people in the Conservative Revolution.
I'm sorry to stop you.
Sure.
Jackson Law is going off on something.
I don't know what he's saying. Oh wait, I'm not saying there's a lot to what is going on, and sure what he's saying and what you're saying, but he takes the role as a parent. There was a time where there was just a teacher. I don't know what he's talking about either.
I don't know who he... I would assume he is referring to
maybe?
Dave Rubin.
Oh wait, Dave Rubin? Who's Dave Rubin?
The gay conservative man.
Oh, I didn't catch his name. The one that Jordan Peterson's talking about. Maybe.
Yeah, maybe that's what he's talking about.
Maybe he's talking about Jordan Peterson, because Jordan Peterson was just a teacher. I don't know. Let's continue.
He was a professor, but
we're taking too much time talking.
We are. Okay, yeah. We're
probably going to have to do a part 2 of this, honestly.
I don't know. It's 9 o'clock. I got some time.
All right. We'll see.
I got some time.
I'm starting it.
My roommate might be a little...
Both ethically...
We'll see what happens. Wait, who's your roommate?
I'll deal with him in the morning.
Who's your roommate?
My roommate.
Yeah, who's your roommate?
I'm not going to say it. That's rude.
All right, fine. You should come live here with Gimli.
With Gimli and you? All right.
Yeah, just sleep with Gimli.
And financially. And they managed it so far. They have these 2 kids, and I suspect they'll do a perfectly good job of giving these kids a wonderful home. But they're also incredibly financially, privileged. Dave's earned it, but they have the capital to make this non-standard solution a possibility. But it's by no means duplicatable for the typical person. I mean, the simplest way to have a child for the average person is to have a man and a woman involved. And you can use technological intermediaries, but it can't propagate easily, that solution. And so one of the things that's emerged, this is extremely interesting, one of the things that's emerged on the cognitive neuroscience front recently, and the same things happened in the field of AI, is the realization that at the center of all of our concepts is an ideal. That's actually how we categorize. We categorize just like Plato initially hypothesized. We literally categorize in relationship to an implicit ideal.
I think you're right.
To even use the term family, and for that to be meaningful, there has to be an ideal. And the organization that I've started working with and helping put together has made it part of our formal propositional landscape that the ideal has to be something like stable, long-term, monogamous, heterosexual, child-centered couples. And now, the problem with the ideal, this is what the postmodernists have shaken their fists about forever, especially the French, like Derrida and Foucault. The problem with the ideal is that it marginalizes, right? Because the more distant you are from the ideal, the less you can fit in. And so the question then arises, what do you do with the margin? And that's also a question that's so old that was even dealt with in biblical times, by the way, the problem of the fringe or the margin. And the answer has to be something like, look, everybody falls short of the ideal. Mm-hmm. Like even a stable married heterosexual couple, lots of the times during their, say, 30-year marriage, they're going to fight, they're going to wish they were divorced, they're going to wish they were with other partners, there might be affairs, lots of people end up divorced. The vast majority of us will never realize the ideal. Well, none of us will in totality. Right. But that doesn't mean we should sacrifice the ideal. What it means is that we should put forth the ideal forthrightly, but allow the necessary space for deviation from the ideal so that everybody can move forward despite the fact that the ideal has to rule.
Again, it's order and chaos, right? It always goes back to order and chaos.
Yes. For formulating almost any form of governance, society, and culture, it almost always comes back to that balance.
Yeah.
And you need that enough structure of that ideal. Mm-hmm. That is the order. But you need just enough wiggle room so that everybody can feel at least they're in on the common pursuit of that ideal, and not only of that ideal, but of the prosperity of the entire society.
Right.
But that means you have to allow them to veer from the cultural ideal slightly.
Oh, Jack Laws, what are you talking about? Come on. Don't.
I think he also just called Jordan Peterson a weaponized Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, he did. I mean, I kind of see what he's saying, to be fair, but
yeah,
the weaponized Mr. Rogers, but the segregation stuff, Jack's Law, what are you talking about?
Bro, come on. We know that doesn't
We
function.
can all get along. If there was segregation, me and Jared wouldn't be able to talk right now.
Hey.
It's true. Isn't it?
That's true.
It might be true. I don't know. Maybe not. Because we're not in a southern state. So maybe.
Yeah, we're
I don't know.
We're in like a western state, but because of the what fucking line was that? Dixie line?
I don't know. I know you're talking about Dixie is the South, but no, really quick though.
No. There's a line. It's a whole political.
Yeah.
It was the line that divided what was going to be considered a slave state or a free state.
Okay, that's kind of interesting. But no, really quick, I just wanted to say, I like his idea of you have an ideal that you'll never reach, but you still have to have the ideal, because it's like you aim for the stars, you land on the moon, right? Just because you may not have succeeded completely, because you had a big goal, you get somewhere close to that goal. So it's like I always tell people, you seek perfection knowing you'll never be perfect. You know what I mean?
That was something, that was that basic concept that you must seek perfection. Mm-hmm. It is the pursuit of perfection that is key. It is not ever reaching it.
Bruce Lee has a quote about that. He says something along the lines of, and I'm looking up the exact quote. He says something along the lines of, there we go. A goal is not always meant to be reached. It often serves simply as something to aim at. Right? You're not always going to reach your goal, but by having a goal...
But you need an aim.
Yeah, if you have the aim, even if, like, let's say you're
trying to... It gives you a way to plot a trajectory.
Yeah, like, let's say
course correct.
Right, like let's say you're trying to be first place in a race. Like maybe you don't become first place, but then you become second place, right? That puts you in a position to be first place next time. Like you need a goal, even if you fall short, to aim towards. You know what I mean?
I'm sorry, I was having a sidebar. But maybe we plug my thoughts in.
You hear what I said?
Could you repeat the last like 2
all I said is like you aim for first place in a race. Sometimes you end up in second place. You know what I mean? It's like
but that doesn't mean that the pursuit of the pursuit of first is evil or wrong.
Right. Like
even if you
should try to be first. Yeah, you still should try to be first. Really quick, what did Jack Law say? Segregation is not a bad word. Yeah, the word itself, but like the cultural implications behind segregation, I think are bad. I think in the United States we have a duty to aim towards inclusion. Like, not, I hate the word inclusion because that gets used.
The word inclusion.
I hate inclusion gets overused.
One of those overused words, but
yeah. Let's not say inclusion. Let's say cooperation between different.
It's cooperation,
identities.
really.
Yeah, because we are an empire.
To a common aim, to a common goal. Because we are a conglomerate. We're a mixture of like a dozen different.
But that's what empire is. An empire is a mixture of cultural identities. We are an empire. Even if we're not a monarchy the same way an empire is going to be, we operate as an empire. We operate as a mixture of different cultures with one American identity. We are an empire, and our empire must triumph. You know, our strength is, I hate that when they say our strength is diversity, but it's true. It's a cliche, but that has to become our strength because we're never going to get rid of our diversity. We're always going to be a diverse country, so we have to learn to live together. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, but we are very often the best of many diverse backgrounds.
Yeah.
Intellectually,
that's
culturally,
what we want, right?
Nationally.
That's what we want. That's what we want to aim
ideally, yes. You want that. And you want to aim towards the synergy between all of those things.
Yeah.
However, what did he say? Today, let's be real. We collect data on you every day. Who you are in your lines in a place like this. Of what you are will.
Yeah, I mean,
what you are will to let in your life.
I think I get what he's saying. He's essentially saying, like, with no, we don't what? Elaborate. No, we don't what?
Elaborate. Please.
I know what he's saying above when he's talking about we collect data on you every day. Like, just look at cookies.
Oh yeah,
right?
I mean, obviously.
People know exactly what you want to buy, everything, all that stuff. You don't have to watch the same videos. I don't know what you're getting at, Jack's Law. I'm just making a point. I don't know why you're getting slightly hostile.
I don't think he's getting hostile.
No,
I just don't.
I don't know what you're
understand
getting at. I don't know
his point here. What's your point?
Let's keep watching the video. We can go.
I'll watch. I'll monitor the chat.
All right, he's just being silly.
It's a great framing.
He's like my little brother.
Jump in there for 1 second to draw even one further distinction, if I may. First is there's the sense in which each of us falls short of our ideals, okay, both as individuals and even as a nation. I mean, you could extrapolate this to the American level and, take the critique of America as a nation is that, well, America's hypocritical, right? It had nations it set into motion, but there were slaves on day one, ergo the ideals themselves are false. No, in fact, hypocrisy is probably pretty good evidence that you have ideals, right? There's no sense in which, for example, the Chinese Communist Party could be called hypocritical. You can't be called hypocritical if you actually are measured against fundamentally nihilism at your core. So idealism and the existence of ideals makes hypocrisy possible. Yeah. We should be grateful when we see hypocrisy because then we know we have two things. We have both ideals and we have something that is real. And something that is real never matches or rarely ever matches the ideal. So there, in a certain sense, we should be vindicated. Yeah. We should feel reassured that we're doing something right because we have both ideals and reality. And that's just true at the individual level of anybody who's in a married relationship knows this. If they don't admit it, they're lying to you or they're lying to themselves. It's just truth, okay? I think that is still distinct from a second question that you raised, which is also a good question, which is I think what the left, and I'm a big fan of taking the best arguments we possibly can to understand, what we're taking seriously here. Is the marginal point, is who's at the outer end of the margin. And there, I think some of this relates to not just a failure of an individual temporally over the course of a lifetime to depart from the ideal, but some ways in which a certain person cannot themselves be part of the ideal ever, because their genetics are real, right? What brings us into this world is real, be it gender, be it sexual orientation, be it other attributes that make one successful or not in a system that's set up in a certain way. there is literally a reality of permanent marginalization for some, even according to an ideally structured system. And so I think it's important to take that seriously. But the problem with the modern left, the modern radical left, is it turns that exercise of interrogating the question of what we do at the margin and makes a whole new system out of it, right? What began as a challenge to the system on behalf of the marginalized becomes the new system. That is the essence of the woke cancer, actually. I didn't mind it when it was an idea in the halls of a liberal arts academy to think about, at least debate, how it is we accommodate the people who are marginalized in a system that is still an ideal system. That's an open conversation that, at least under parameters of free speech, which, as you said, is an intermediating mechanism between kind of the creative liberals and the what was the juxtaposition to creative conscientious conservatives. That's great, but as long as we have free speech. But the problem is, when that challenge to the system becomes the new system, we're then heading to a very different place than even the ideal that the pro-marginal camp would have argued for.
Okay, well, so we can lay that out a little bit too. What happened to Nicola Sturgeon is a perfect example of that, the Prime Minister of Scotland, who just resigned. Because here's the problem with the fringe, okay? So the ideal in the center is a unity. It's a single thing. The fringe is a multiplicity. Mm-hmm. Now, the problem with the fringe is that because it's a multiplicity, it can't occupy the center without destroying the ideal. And that just brings the whole category to collapse. The fringe of the fringe will destroy the fringe.
That's right.
And so,
elaborate. I know he's only got 200 characters.
Even on
I love what you. I mean, the fringe defines itself in relation to the ideal, right? In a certain sense.
Well, it has freedom. It also has freedom because of that.
Exactly.
It's like the freedom of being at the margin.
Because there's many versions of being at the fringe. It's kind of like that lost bat analogy. You send your sonar signal, it bounces back and says, "This is where you are." It's like planets orbiting the sun. All right. Once the sun's gone, there's going to be a whole new structure around you. That's exactly what happens. And sometimes I think conservatives, they'll use this phrase, right? They'll come to eat their own. Right, and I think that there's a point to that, but it's low resolution. I mean, the essence of what's going on is actually what you described, which is that once you've destroyed or invaded the ideal itself, by definition, the being on the fringe is sort of nihilistic at its core. And so at that point, it's a free-for-all, which is to say that, okay, well, you thought you were on the fringe as being gay. Well, guess what? Or even you could do the feminist version.
You ain't seen nothing yet.
You ain't seen nothing. You could see the feminist version of this too. Title IX, women's sports. Women are on the fringe. Well, then when that itself becomes the center of the story, you just wait till you just say that the men become the women that actually, through the back door, decimate the existence of women's sports, not because they weren't funded pre-Title IX, but even after funding, the essence of it is gone if biological men are competing as women. Same thing with respect to being gay. All of this time to sort of accept somebody who is attracted to someone of a different sex at birth by saying that the sex of the person you're attracted to is hardwired at birth.
Kind of
right? That was the premise of the gay rights movement, and I think there's a lot of truth in it too. Is completely undercut by a new movement that says your sex itself is completely fluid over the course of your lifetime. So it isn't quite what some people will say is they will eventually eat their own. It's the fact that they've itself lost the structure against which they at least had the liberty to
the
fringe of.
That's kind of true.
And so that's not to say that we shouldn't have conversations for disabled people or whatever in the American Disabilities Act.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that.
Comes up in a political context. There's a whole discussion to be had about how we deal with this problem of the fringe, how we deal with accommodation against the backdrop of ideals. And I want to be really clear. I don't dismiss that conversation. In fact, I think that should be the product of dialectic. I think free speech can actually be a mechanism for sorting out those kinds of questions, and I don't reject their importance. But I think that what's happened right now is the obsession with the fringe has eviscerated the ideal itself, which leaves both those who espouse the ideals and even those who identified themselves as one time being a member of a fringe all worse off in the end. And that's exactly where we are. And that's due to failure.
What's up?
Go to the Discord. If we can find a good stopping point for the video, we could go to the Discord and have this discussion. But
if he wants.
How far are we?
1 second.
Oh, we've still got another 50 minutes.
We don't have to finish everything today. We can always come back to this video another time.
I'm sure we could just come back tomorrow, part 2.
Yeah, and we can we can do part 2.
if we want to move over to the Discord and actually have this discussion with Jack's Law here, so he's not limited.
What he's talking about, though.
By typing. But that's why I want to discuss it with him, because I want to figure out what he's talking about.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready for that conversation today. Not gonna lie.
I'm always ready.
Honestly, we might just
stay strapped, man.
Well, I'm thinking we can end part 1 today, and like I said, do another one tomorrow to finish up the. I don't know, maybe, or we could power through a little more.
We could get to the end of the section, maybe.
But they're about to start a new section. Well, let's extrapolate what they talked about just now, right?
All right, so.
Wait, really quick. Jack Laws, if you go to the About page of the YouTube, go to the About. I'll text it. Here, say what you're going to say, Jared.
So what they've just been discussing, they covered. I was a little distracted by Jack's Laws, trying to figure out what he's saying. But what I was paying attention to in this section, they've mostly been discussing how free speech acts as a mechanism to moderate what is the ideal, how do we reach that, and what's the fucking word for it?
Filter?
How can we adjust the culture slightly to make it so that we can all cooperate together and aim for the same goal?
You know what's interesting?
What?
So
what's so interesting?
Shut up. You take free speech, right? Whenever we try to stifle someone's free speech, whenever we try to censor someone, we're essentially saying that their ideas are too dangerous for people to listen to them, right? Yes. So you're adding legitimacy to what they're talking about by saying, you don't deserve the right to free speech because we think you're going to manipulate people. You're basically adding legitimacy to what they're saying because you're seeing them as a threat to your establishment, right? So that's kind of interesting about that.
Well, I think it warps the conversation entirely, because now it's not about what is correct. Now it is not about finding a solution or even what is logically, philosophically correct. Now, once you begin censorship, it's about who controls the dialogue, who holds the power. Mm-hmm. I think Jack's Law just joined the Discord. I think I just got a Discord notification. I don't know.
Oh,
someone just joined.
That ASDFASDFJK.
Let's go.
You want here? Can you greet him? Because I'll add him as a friend. Can you greet him just so there's a public greeting, so he sees. Just do the usual stick idea. I'll probably give you admin privileges because you're kind of part of the team now.
What do you mean the usual shtick? I don't understand.
Just say welcome to the server, introduce yourself, all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
I'm gonna add.
That's the usual shtick.
Yeah. Edit roles. All right, I'm gonna have to use my other account to add you, but I'm gonna give you admin roles later on.
Oh wow.
Because I trust you.
Oh wow, thank you.
Especially since you're gonna be doing more podcasts with us and stuff like that.
Well, I'd love to. I've got the time.
Yeah. Anyway,
any ideas?
Chat, if you're listening right now, chat, do you want us to continue analyzing this interview or leave it for tomorrow? Because if you guys want, we can talk a little bit in Discord. We can all chat on the Discord voice call section if you guys want to.
That's true. We could.
Also,
Absolutely feel free to join.
Jack Laws is cool and everything, but I don't know if I trust him on this live stream because you have to realize if he says some off-the-wall stuff, then that could ruin that can ruin the restriction stuff of the. I don't know if I trust him yet. We might have to just talk to him personally first to see if he's not crazy.
We could just talk. We could talk in the Discord.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
Off the stream.
Off the stream, exactly. That's what I'm saying. But chat, let us know what you guys want to do. If you guys want to keep.
Yeah, what do you guys want to do? Want to keep watching?
Keep watching. Leave it for tomorrow. We can do part 2 tomorrow. Let us know what you want to do in the chat, or just be quiet and watch if you want. We can do one more. We can go one more.
We can get one of my schmeckles out and let's do one more section.
Yeah, let's one more section. All right, I'm gonna start.
That's good.
Failure of the conservative movement. It's a failure of the conservative movement. See, we can blame the people on the fringe for getting us there. They were just the agents and the pawns who moved it. But it's the role of the conservative movement to keep that structure intact. And I think the absence of...
And to make a case for it.
And so then what happens in the evolution of time now, right? So now we're in a moment where the discussion that you and I are talking about, that ship has sailed. The structure itself is gone. What does that require? That's what makes this so difficult. And I think that in some ways, you've made a more powerful philosophical case for my candidacy that in my first week I have yet to do yet, which is that it requires defying the odds of having somebody who is both conscientious conservative, as you noted, but who has the capacity for being visionary in having the vision of recreating that structure, that solar system around which the rest of the fringes can orbit. And that's inherently an unlikelihood. But by the psychological nature of creativity and conscientiousness, those are not supposed to coincide. That's what sets a really high bar. It's also what calls me into this race because it is what our moment demands, because we're not starting from neutral territory. We're starting from the state of entropic chaos that you highlighted. The desert. We're starting from being lost in the desert. And so thank you, because you have in a deeply philosophically grounded way made the case for my candidacy and why I am doing this. Whether I will deliver or not the next year and a half remains to be told, but that's at least the challenge I'm setting out to take on. And thank you for laying that out.
Well, with this group that I've been working with in London, we've also set forward a couple of other propositions too, which is that if your policy requires compulsion or force, it's at least suboptimal. Mm-hmm. And so we're trying to play an invitational game. And so you could imagine that on the visionary horizon. Your goal as a visionary is to produce an image that's so compelling that people of their own free accord say, I'd be willing to sacrifice to that end.
Yes. Yeah. Willing to sacrifice. I love the way you frame that because you can make a sacrifice if you know what you are sacrificing for. Actually, so this was a big part of my upbringing, right? I mean, immigrant parents from India, Hindu tradition, came to this country. Part and parcel of parenting, part and parcel of growing up as a kid in that household. The idea of sacrifice was woven into my upbringing, right? Grandparents who lived in the house because it was their duty to take care of their parents because that was just familial sacrifice needed to be made. Sacrifices needed to be made to raise my brother and I, to have the academic achievements that we did in the education. That didn't happen in a vacuum. It happened on the back of parents who actually said there's more to life than just following your latest self-indulgence. But these things can be done if you know what you're sacrificing for. I draw that as an analogy to some of my policy agenda. This is a harder sell, but I think it's true too. The United States today needs to, I've made the case, declare independence from China. That's a whole separate geopolitical discussion we can have, why I think that's important, why I think there's an opportunity. But I've also been, even in week one, very clear this will involve some measure of sacrifice. In fact, if there's some resistance I'm getting to the Declaration of Independence proposition of China, it's actually coming from some Republicans who are unwilling to make that sacrifice, who have become so addicted to buying cheap stuff. But again, I say that we can make those sacrifices if we know what we are sacrificing for. And so this idea of sacrifice, I think, is fundamental to this question of identity. Once you're grounded in identity, once you're grounded in who you are and what you might be willing to make a sacrifice for, it's almost a litmus test for identity. If you have nothing that you're willing to make a sacrifice for, it means you have no identity, right? And so that's a great framing of it.
Oh God, what's that old saying?
Shopify. All right, I think this could be our ending point for now, at least. What were you gonna say?
I thought that was it. Nah. I can't remember what it was. There was like a saying related to what.
Sure.
Some old quote relating to what he just said, which is essentially that if you are not willing to sacrifice something that violates your moral structure, then you effectively have no moral structure at all.
Yo, there's two people that joined the Discord. Jack Laws and someone else. Weird. Anyway, but
Interesting.
Yeah, you have to be willing to sacrifice. Otherwise, if you have nothing to sacrifice for, then you have no identity. Because identity is something that you would sacrifice for. So your family, for example, right? You would sacrifice your life for your family. You would do evil to keep your family alive. You would kill other individuals to keep your family safe, right? Yep. Morals go out the window when it comes to defending your identity. So if you have nothing to sacrifice for, you have nothing to identify with. Suresh Kumar Pupala says no identity is the best thing. With that, you simply fight for truth and justice. I don't know if that's true or not, because you have to consider good is an identity as well, right? Doing the right thing. If you think of religious identity and you're a true religious being, then you are doing what is right because you're...
I could also just make the realistic case that can you even lack an identity?
Mm-hmm.
As a human being, can you...
I think you
simply not have an identity?
I think, but it's a bad thing if you lack identity. I think you can lack identity, but then you become like, you look at the hyper-capitalist consumer society we live in today, people are defined by their economic contributions and by their possessions, right? That is an identity. It's an economic identity. It's just not a good one because it leaves you with this like superficial life, this life without deeper meaning, without deeper purpose. You wake up, you work 9 to 5. That's your identity. You work 9 to 5.
If your identity is imperialistic and still want to play boss and trying to defend, that may not be great.
Well, here's the thing, right? Sure, but
that's
power is part of identity. If you don't have power, then it doesn't matter how good you are. You can be the best person in the world, but if you have no power at all, then you have no ability to enact goodness upon other people. So you can like talk about non-aggression principle and like being peaceful all you want, but if you don't have the power to do good in the world, then it doesn't matter how good you are. If you are, just like, it doesn't matter how good, like, let's take a society, for example. It doesn't matter how good your people are, how happy they are, how fair and just your society is, if your state does not survive the test of time. If your state does not survive the test of time, then it doesn't matter how strong, it doesn't matter how happy or how fair or how just your society is. Survival is number one. Power is necessary for survival. Therefore, you can talk about like no identity is best or all these greedy positions, but at the end of the day, if you don't exist, if you don't have enough power to exist, then it doesn't matter how good you are. You know what I mean?
That was right. Yes. I'm trying to keep up with what they're saying in chat now.
That's good. I like when chat is active. Let's see.
I like an active chat.
Nevsy said, yo, I was recommended your Dakota video a week or so ago. I love your content and keep up your mission. You're definitely in that algorithm, so keep propelling yourself. Have a good night too, man. Thank you, Nevsy. I appreciate the support,
good night
brother.
Yourself, Nevsy.
You have a good night as well, Nevsy. I appreciate the support, brother. Jidu...
You just don't see that there is a place for every monster. That's a very fascinating
yeah, that's a good quote. Jack's Law, that's the most base thing you said today.
That's a pretty good quote. That's, I could agree and disagree with that because on the one hand, it'd be super nice to have a extremely peaceful society full of nice, calm individuals, but that's so unrealistic. And when shit hits the fan, you need people with those, what you could describe as monstrous tendencies or monstrous or even monstrous capabilities.
Sure. Capability is the most important thing, right? Because you have to be a monster to be able to survive in a chaotic world, right? A chaotic, violent world, right? So let's see.
There's like there's a super cliche one, right? Better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war, right?
Yeah, it's an old Chinese proverb, but it's true. You gotta stay capable.
Same concept, right?
Yeah, keep your family safe. If you can't keep your family safe, then it doesn't matter what the hell you do in your life. That's the most important thing. Jiddu Krishnamurti. Shit, I'm fucking messing that up. But interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Jiddu
philosopher. Suresh, I appreciate
no identity.
I'll have to check it out.
No identity has immense power beyond your imagination.
No, I disagree because you do need a certain, even if it's an individual identity, you have some
identity. The thing
is,
I would have to see what he defines as identity.
Sure, yeah.
And what he defines as power, right? Mm-hmm. These are very stickler terms that if we don't agree on these definitions, or if we can't find a consensus for those definitions, then what he's saying could mean two very different things.
Right. So he might. Yeah, we just have to extrapolate. Yeah, what he means by identity.
The thing is a sense of identity, I would argue, can give you power.
Yes.
Because if you consider yourself to be a capable, confident, and
But here's the thing, Suresh.
Capable, confident person.
Wait, really quick. Oh, sorry. Finish what you're saying. I just want to respond to
Suresh. If you consider yourself a capable, or confident, or even I'm forgetting the word for it, but it's essentially like a tough motherfucker, right? You, in and of just maintaining that mindset, can endure far more than people who are anxious. And even if they're more, I've seen this before, even people who are more on paper capable than you, but they lack that confidence, they will often do worse.
Well, it's all about the will, right? Your why needs to be stronger than your how.
And most of people's why will ultimately come from their identity.
Yeah,
and what really they value.
Yeah, so, Suresh.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say, Suresh, you say truth, righteousness, and justice must supersede whatever your identity you think. What if that is your identity, though? That is an identity. If you consider yourself a just individual, you are basing justice on a moral foundation which is rooted in identity. So to pretend that is not a part of identity is just fallacious. I think that truth, righteousness, and justice, it constitutes an identity when you consider that truth, righteousness, and justice are rooted in a moral foundation, which hence is part of your identity.
It at the very least constitutes that you have a moral framework, and if you have a moral framework, that moral framework is some axiom you hold as a part of your identity.
Yeah.
Thus, you already have an identity, even if your identity is simply that you have a strong moral framework. That's still an identity.
I don't know if axiom is the right word in this case. It might be, but generally I see axioms are kind of like just like fundamental truths that exist without human interference. Like 1 + 1 = 2. I don't know, I'm not going to discuss
sure. We could argue semantic definitions about it later, but I could change it to principle if you want. It could mean the same thing.
Yeah, values,
in that,
etc.
If this is your moral framework, if your moral framework is centered around truth, righteousness, and justice, your identity is going to be derived from those things, and your identity is someone who fights for truth, righteousness, and justice.
Mm-hmm.
You already have an identity. Right there, there's an identity.
Right. Also, I just want to give a shout out to my aunt Nadia and my aunt Alex. They're watching this stream right now. Shout out to my aunts. Appreciate the support. They're texting me right now. Appreciate the support from all my family members.
It's always good, man. It's always good to see your family supporting your wacky goals and hobbies.
Yeah. Support the crazy nephew.
I like sending my mom really sketchy rock climbing videos.
Yeah, you gotta send your mom this link. Let her become based like we are.
Bro, she's asleep right now, bro. She knows.
Suresh, let's say you stick to Christian identity and try to defend it, and then deny all cruelty done by Christianity on humanity. But there can be so I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but there can be good and bad identities. You can't just pretend that identity as a whole is bad. You have to look at each identity and weigh it on its own merit. So to say identity in general is bad, I don't think is a very good argument. I think that you can argue each individual identity's like specific merits. Yeah, based on its dumpster fire. Shout out. Yes, my aunts. I don't think my aunt. One of my aunts. Well, my aunts are relatively based. They can work on their baseness.
But to continue, so I would say that just because you have an identity does not mean that you can accept criticism. Mm-hmm. You could still accept criticism of your belief structure and your moral structure, even if you have an identity.
Well, like, take Christianity, for example. I take a Kierkegaardian approach to Christianity. So essentially, Kierkegaard was highly critical of church structure and the way that church morality sort of manifested in society. And he took a sort of philosophical approach to Christianity. And that's kind of how I approach Christianity. I think that Christianity, not just the structure, but also the morality of Christianity can be interpreted in ways that are very harmful to society, not just in a cruel way, but also in a weak way. Because you think of like Nietzsche, one of his criticisms of Christianity was that if Christians focus too much on the life after our life on earth, if they focus too much on the afterlife, then you call them preachers of death. People that preach that everything will be good in heaven, therefore there's not really a point to change things on earth. So I'm just saying that so I consider myself a Christian, right? But I will never avoid criticism of Christianity, because part of being a good believer is criticizing your own beliefs and really testing your beliefs. Because if you can't test your beliefs, you can't deal with tough questions, then you're just a fake believer. You're just taking the superficial stance on belief. Like someone I know, wink wink.
Damn, bro. Anyway, but another example from another side is that I'm not religious at all.
Yeah, I wasn't talking about you.
I know, but I'm not even religious at all, right? And yet, despite me being more secular, I still see the absolute function for religion in a culture and in a society. There needs to be something that fulfills that role, that gives people a sense of meaning and a collective set of stories, beliefs, and values.
Mm-hmm. So really quick, I agree with what you're saying, right? Suresh just said, except Sermon on the Mount, what good they have in the Bible, hell to non-believers, and trying to eliminate all great philosophy. So that's a good point, right? I'm not going to argue specific, because like I said, I will criticize specific Christian principles, right? So like the whole concept of Christianity that like the Bible is the only book you should read, I criticize that. Any Christian that says you should only read the Bible and that all non-believers go to hell, I firmly criticize that. I will firmly criticize that. So Suresh, I'm not denying your criticisms of Christianity. I'm not saying you're wrong. What I am saying, though, is that identity is not necessarily inherently bad. There is good and bad identity. So, and there's also good and bad identity within specific identities. You can interpret Christianity in a way that becomes a good identity. You can interpret Christianity in a way that becomes a bad identity.
I mean, just a wonderful example of this was the slavery debate in the United States.
Exactly.
The Bible, the same, often almost the exact same sections of the Bible were utilized both to justify and to deny and to denounce slavery.
Right, and it's interesting. The reason, so people that tried to justify slavery essentially said that slaves weren't human, right, and that only humans.
But also that there are passages in the Old Testament that cover slave owning and how you ought to own slaves. Of course, like the Southern slave owners like broke all of those fucking rules,
right?
But there are still passages there that literally go over the laws for slave owning.
Right. So it could be interpreted in a way that justifies something as abhorrent and horrible as slavery, but then it's also part of Christian morality that leads to the abolition of slaves, because egalitarianism is a fundamentally Christian concept. The idea of egalitarianism, even if you look at the Enlightenment, so like Suresh, you can like criticize Christianity all you want, but Christianity is the largest movement of egalitarianism and equality among humans out of any religion in the world.
If you take out Bible, what else is Christianity?
I just told you what else it is.
So truth, righteousness, and justice must prevail your petty identities. But identity itself isn't.
Well,
isn't
Suresh,
like
what do you identify with? Like, what is the principle of your
with?
morality? Right? So tell me that. Because, like, I told you, I will criticize Christianity.
So do you then, logically, I would say you must believe in some level of an objective secular truth, right? Objective secular morality.
Yeah, what do you believe in, Suresh?
What are the foundations of that?
Because, like I said, I will criticize Christianity, but I will also give Christianity credit where credit's due. Egalitarianism, the concept that all men are created equally under God, is a fundamentally Christian concept which soaks into the Enlightenment, which soaks into like the whole concept of liberal democracy today, which has its issues, but you can't deny the relationship with Christianity, egalitarianism, and liberal democracy today. Human with thinking ability, but how is that in contention with Christianity? That's in contention with certain interpretations of Christianity, but I just find your arguments are very weak, Suresh, because all you're saying is that because Christianity has been interpreted in a specific way in the past, and certain aspects of Christianity are negative, you are essentially saying that pretty much encapsulates the whole entirety of Christianity into negating humans with thinking ability. At the end of the day, yes, Christianity has a lot of issues in the past, but if you just study like theology in general, the New Testament is a sort of reconciliation of the Old Testament and issues with the Old Testament. Say exactly what you said there, Suresh. See, I'm not denying what you're saying. I see the problem, Suresh, is that you're trying to attack Christianity in a way that you are seeing me as like, you're trying to argue with me as if I'm a Christian fundamentalist, which I'm not. I'm not going to disagree with your criticisms of Christianity, but to try to encapsulate the entirety of religion behind those behind those criticisms is just going to be ineffective, because ultimately, if you take, so like, I'm not going to take the Bible literally, for example. I take it as teaching. So you look at like the messages behind different scriptures and verses that can be interpreted in a variety of ways. I'm not going to agree with every single statement within that. So for example, like some of the issues that you're bringing up, right? I'm not going to agree with those things as correct, but to try to encapsulate the entirety of a faith-based system, which has led to a lot of good in the world, I think that you're just overlooking a lot of other things, and you're just nitpicking at all of the negatives.
I mean, there's plenty to nitpick in the Bible. Trust me, I've done it.
Of course.
I've done it for years. Mm-hmm. But the thing is, it especially with a document like the Bible, a book that is who knows how many thousands of years old, stories that are who knows how many thousands of years old.
Mm-hmm.
And then you could get into the possible interpretations of the Old Testament, because there's some good history in there that's actually pretty accurate, but there's also like very, very outlandish stories and events that take place.
All right, so here's the thing, Suresh. First of all, I'm going to make... Suresh, what country are you from, Suresh? Because I'm going to make a point right now. Suresh, what country are you from? And I want to hear your answer, because I want to make a point. So, Suresh, I'd like to know what country you're from, because from there we can kind of extrapolate where your potential moral foundations exist in. Because you can't pretend that your moral justifications come purely from India, right?
India.
Take India, for example. India is based on the Hindu religion, right? The Hindu religion has a caste system where you literally have the lowest rungs of society are completely outcasted from being able to engage in normal life. And obviously there's a lot of social movements that are looking to ratify this issue. And don't get me wrong, India is full of rich and beautiful culture. It's a beautiful country. But your moral foundations are going to be rooted in a specific rule set that basically justifies the complete outset. So, all right, atheistic Hindu, right?
Atheistic Hindu.
No. So I respect that. I respect that, because Hinduism.
I've never heard of that.
Hinduism has a lot of beautiful teachings. The Bhagavad Gita, although I haven't read it, I've heard and I've read about it, has a bunch of beautiful things. Hinduism is a beautiful religion, but Hinduism also has a lot of flaws. We can't deny that having untouchables, being completely separate from society, yeah, and that's a good thing, Suresh. I agree with you. You should fight against caste system.
In the same way that we want to fight against,
the
slavery.
Christian, exactly. The same way that you want to fight against...
there are so many things that are described in the Bible and belief structures, especially if you go into the Old Testament, that are like monstrous shit, if you look at it today. Absolutely monstrous. However, one of the amazing things you can do with an identity is you can correct it.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
You can adjust it. And it's the same for documents like the Bible. Mm-hmm. Or the Quran, or the Torah, or I always forget the Hindu one. I'm so sorry.
Bhagavad Gita.
I can't even pronounce it. I'm not cultured enough on it, but
I think.
I'm the same. Yeah,
wait, really quick. I just want to make a quick point. Suresh, you're 100% right. There are issues with Christianity, but the same way that you are against the caste system, which is a fundamental aspect of Hinduism, I am against certain fundamental aspects of Christianity that I deem negative to the human condition, that I deem negative to the human spirit. So to say you call yourself an atheistic Hindu, you still have Hindu in that identity. Your identity and your moral foundation is rooted in Hinduism. It is beautiful. Exactly what you're saying. Core of Hindu philosophy is beautiful, and caste system, the dirt falling on the core, we have to work on it. That's the same thing with Christianity. There's a lot of beauty to Christianity, and there's a lot of ugliness, and we have to reconcile the ugliness and reconfigure the religion in a way that's going to be positive for people as a whole. So I the same way that I think Christianity can be reconciled in a way that the negative aspects of it don't have to be a part of its core.
Yeah, pretty straightforward. We seem to agree on these things.
The thing, Suresh, is I'm giving you the benefit of the doubt because I do believe in the beauty of religion and the ability to use it in a way that's going to be beneficial for mankind. All I ask is for you to grant me the same respect in regards to Christianity, because I'm not denying the fundamental critiques of Christianity. I'm not denying that. I'm saying they are wrong, but I'm saying that they can be reconciled. I just told you what the beauty of Christianity is. Egalitarianism in the modern sense comes from Christianity. The idea that all men are created equal under God. That is a fundamentally Christian concept. You look at a lot of similarities between Hinduism, Buddhism, and Christianity. It ties down to the necessity for suffering on this world, the rejection of certain earthly pleasures in order to not be completely consumed by earthly pleasures, practicing moderation. You look at the 7 virtues. So like charity is one of the virtues, so giving back to your community. There's a lot of beauty in Christianity. If you look at Jesus Christ, and obviously there's going to be a debate between the historical Jesus and the biblical Jesus, but let's just look at the biblical Jesus, because that is who we base the religion on. The biblical Jesus dealt with outcasts, he dealt with lepers, he dealt with prostitutes. He did not discriminate anybody in society.
The Hindu gods.
He loved, he reached off. Yeah, exactly. The Hindu gods are egomaniacs as well to a certain extent.
Yeah, every god And every religion is an egomaniac.
Yeah, so
because
Suresh,
they all demand worship, they all demand appeasement.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same concept.
The funny thing, Suresh, is you just, no offense, but you were a bit hypocritical here because you talked about the negatives of identity, and now you're reverting back to your Hindu identity to try to justify your religion over mine. So you were literally proving my point that identity is a fundamental aspect of humanity and you can't get away from it. Yeah. So you are falling back to identity by trying to talk about how the root of your religion is somewhat better than the root of Christianity. So really, you're reverting back to identity, which is kind of funny because that's something that you were fighting against for the entirety of this conversation. Not to, lay some facts on you. But Christianity has a lot of beauty, and I just explained to you the beauty behind Christianity, the beauty behind Jesus Christ reaching out to various classes in society, regardless of anything. Like in that day, let's say, if you consider the fact that Jesus, in the Bible is the Son of God, like, all right, he's probably not going to catch leprosy, but the idea of bending down and washing the feet of all these different people from all classes of society, that's the most humiliating thing you could do, washing the dirty feet of people, right? But he did it because he was so humble. And I'm talking about the biblical Jesus here. He was so humble that he was going to risk exposure to leprosy and all these other diseases. He was going to risk the social.
Even that he did that for his own followers, right? He washes the feet of his own followers. When he goes to his disciples' homes and they request to wash his feet, he refuses, saying, "No, I will wash your feet."
Right. And
I mean, that's a fundamental core of the New Testament value structure is humility.
Yes. And going off of that, just to go off of humility and Jesus not caring about what society viewed him as, Jesus would, first of all, Jesus would work with the prostitutes. If you worked with a prostitute back then, people would assume you're sleeping with a prostitute, therefore it would ruin your social standing. He didn't care. He just wanted to help them because he saw them as human. Take Matthew. Matthew was a tax collector. Matthew was so ridiculed by society for being a tax collector that he had to watch Jesus speak from a tree. And again, I'm talking about the biblical New Testament Jesus. He had to watch Jesus speak from a tree. He had to watch Jesus speak from a tree because of how much people hated tax collectors. And nevertheless, Jesus had dinner with Matthew. Jesus had dinner with Matthew because he didn't care what society thought. He only cared about doing the right thing. So you can debate whether Jesus actually did this in history or not, but the fact is that the basis of the Christian morality is based upon the biblical Jesus, and the biblical Jesus was incredibly humble and dealt with all members of different social classes and treated them the same and didn't care what society thought of him. So like I said, you can debate whether this was the historical Jesus or not, but Christians don't base their religion on historical Jesus. They base it on biblical Jesus. So ultimately, it doesn't matter what historical Jesus did. We base it on biblical Jesus, and biblical Jesus represented this kind of person. Krishna saved 1,600 captive women, and 16,000 captive women, then the stigma of 16,000 wives attached to him. I don't know exactly what you're trying to prove by that, but you're reverting to identity, Suresh, and it's quite sad because you tried to talk about how righteousness and truth and justice should prevail identity, and you're letting your identity cloud your judgment right now because you're not willing to look at like a reconcilement between.
I'm a non-believer, so now what Bible tell about me?
Yeah,
what do you mean by that?
No, he's trying to say that the Bible says he's going to go to hell, right? And that's not something I agree with. I don't think you deserve to go to hell, Suresh. I don't believe that. And yes, that's part of the Bible, and that's something that we have to think about.
That's definitely one way of interpreting it. I mean, yeah, it's pretty. I mean, here's the thing, right? So like, I would say a very cut and dry interpretation of what Jesus says on that topic is that as long as before you die you put your faith in him, then you go to heaven, right? Like that's the core concept. And sure, if you want to pick that apart and say that because of that one factor, ergo Christianity is bad, then you must apply the same. So what is humility of Jesus?
I literally explained
because he lowered himself. He lowered himself down to the lowest of the low peoples in his society, down to the level of the prostitutes.
Here's the thing, Suresh. You're talking to someone who literally... Jesus never says that. Actually, if you want to talk about the people that say you're going to hell if you don't accept Jesus, that's Romans. That's Paul. That's St. Paul who wrote that. Jesus never said you're going to hell if you don't believe in him. Now, he said something similar to that. I'm not going to deny it. Jesus said, like, I am the way, right? But you can interpret that in multiple ways, right? Jesus never said you have to see me as the Son of God in order to go to heaven. That was the later books, like the Romans.
You must apply that. You have to apply that standard. Suresh, you have to apply that standard to all religion then.
Exactly. It's not just Christianity. Well, he is being hypocritical.
Because that's every religion.
He's being hypocritical because he's letting his identity supersede his rationality.
Because even in your own religion, they're just as cruel over rules.
Yeah, he just said all cruelty is humanity's ruin in that. Exactly. I know you don't know Jesus personally, only through the Bible. I'm not criticizing that. I'm just saying that you are not being fair in terms of your interpretation of Christianity because you're not giving it the same benefit of the doubt that you're giving your own identity and your own religion and other religions. How come you're not criticizing Buddhism or you're not criticizing Islam? Every single religion has been used to justify mass genocide. The Buddhists in Myanmar are literally killing Muslims right now and have been for the past 10 years. We think of Buddhism as a perfect
if you're saying religion. That you apply this to Hinduism first,
but then how come you're just criticizing Christianity right now?
Why are you being so harsh and stringent on Christianity?
Yeah, because I'm not even disagreeing with you on the Christianity.
Is your argument that there is nothing to be gained from Christianity?
That's a good question. Is that your argument?
Is that the crux here?
Because like
I mean, like I'm an atheist. Like I want to hear you out here. Because I have criticized pretty much every religion I've ever heard of. I wasn't raised... Another important point is I wasn't raised atheist, right? Like, I diverted from it on my own.
Sure.
And I have come back to many of its teachings, not in a religious fashion, but in a very philosophical way.
Right.
Because I believe there's much to be gained from the stories and the virtues that are espoused in the Bible. Just as there's much to be gained from the virtues and stories espoused into Hinduism.
Right.
I'm similarly harsh on the caste system. Good.
Yeah, but the problem, Suresh, is that you don't seem to you're negating all of the benefits of Christianity throughout this conversation. That is the issue. You're not recognizing the benefits of Christianity and the positive things that have come out of Christianity. And because let's talk about egalitarianism. India is still not an egalitarian state. Despite certain issues in the Western world and in the European world, Europe is far more egalitarian than India is today.
Yes.
Temple of Luxor. Let's look up what that means. I don't know what that is. I'm gonna look that up.
It's probably a place, it seems.
And I don't think I don't
has more philosophy than Christian could ever imagine.
I can't even find that on the internet.
I doubt that. I say I doubt that because
I can't find it either. I looked it up and nothing comes up for that. Oh, Luxor Temple. You spelled it wrong. It's Luxor. Luxor.
Oh, it's a Luxor.
And that's funny that you would say that because you say more than Christianity, right? But you can't separate Christianity from Western tradition because Greek ethics influence Christianity. So to negate those two things is wrong.
How you don't seem? Do you not seem to consider history?
You're not considering history.
The greatest philosophers in our entire in all of history have come out of Europe. And they were all Christian.
Right.
And you could say the same thing for the East. There have been amazing philosophers that have come out of the East.
Yes, there have been amazing philosophers that come out of the East, but the diversity of Western thought, there's a lot more diversity in Western philosophical tradition than Eastern philosophical tradition. Even if you look at the main foundational works of Eastern philosophy, I can count them on my fingers. If I could tell you about the foundational works of Western philosophy, I would have too many to count. It's Luxor. Luxor. There is no Luxur. I looked it up. And Suresh, you're just being disingenuous right now, and you're not debating in good faith.
I don't know if it's just disingenuous. I think it's just very dismissive to say that there's more.
Look, message retracted. What message did you retract there?
I don't know. I didn't see that.
Suresh, I think you're being disingenuous because you're trying to when you say somehow you don't seem to consider history, that's kind of that's just a fallacious argument.
Perhaps we could move. I almost want to try and have this discussion with him over a call. We might be able to get
join
some
Discord,
more
Suresh. Maybe we can get a better analytical view of what you're trying to say, but I just don't see a lot of merit in your arguments right now. Because, look, I am highly critical of Christianity. I read Nietzsche extensively, and Nietzsche is one of the biggest critiques of Christianity. He's an atheist, and he's one of the biggest critics of Christianity that you'll ever find, and I read him extensively. I probably have more legitimate criticism of Christianity than you do, Suresh. But I'm not going to talk about them right now because that's not what's being talked about, right? That's not what we're discussing. That's not the position that I'm trying to defend right now. I probably know more about the criticisms of Christianity than you do because I have looked at them. As what I would describe as a Kierkegaardian existential Christian.
In the same that perhaps you probably know more about the criticisms of Hinduism.
You know more about Hinduism. Exactly,
because that is your religion.
That is your religion. You know
but that
more
does
about
not mean that.
There we go. He finally admitted it's Luxor. Thank you.
Okay. However, it's probably spelled differently in another language. But
sure.
My point is that we are both coming from different perspectives, criticizing different religions, but we still hold some of the virtue taken from those religions. Would you agree? Papal bulls? So, 9 o'clock. I'm busy. I'm having an important discussion here.
What are the papal bulls? How to join. So the Discord link is in the About page of the YouTube page. You can just go over there, join the Discord server, and then we can add you to the call. We're happy to talk. As long as you do it in good faith and you don't be disrespectful. I don't think you're being disrespectful. I just think you're arguing a little bit out of good faith right now. And again, you're talking about papal bulls. The papacy is not a fundamental aspect of the church. There's nothing in the Bible about the papacy. The papacy was an organic institution that emerged from Christianity into the Catholic Church. Now, I am a Catholic in terms of like how I worship. I worship as a Catholic, but I also have a lot of criticisms of the Catholic Church. But Catholicism and Sam Harris. Oh, of course you're a Sam Harris follower. Interesting. But the papacy is not a fundamental aspect of Christian. Well, in a sense, it is, I guess. But the papacy, as we see it today, and the way that the papacy is structured and formatted, is not. There's nothing in the Bible about the way that the papacy is structured and formatted today. So to try to use that as if you're going to try to use the corruption of the papacy as an argument against Christianity, that's just going to be completely disingenuous and not really productive, because at the end of the day, there are splits in Christianity. You have the Orthodox split during the Great Schism. You have the Protestant Reformation. You have lots of different types of Christianity. So to try to use Catholicism and the papacy as a basis for your critique of Christianity is just going to be disingenuous. It's not going to be fruitful in terms of creating a good, beneficial, productive conversation. Yeah, I'm getting tired. And Suresh, first and foremost, I just want to say, I would appreciate if you had the same respect for my belief systems I have for yours, because I have a lot of respect for Hinduism. I have a lot of respect for Indian culture. I think there's a lot of beauty in Indian culture. I have a lot of respect for it, and I'm not trying to point out. The only bad thing I pointed out was the caste system. And I conceded that doesn't necessarily mean it's a fundamental part of Hinduism. I conceded that because I'm trying to argue in good faith here and debate in good faith, but I feel like you're not applying the same metric to our conversation regarding the criticisms of Christianity. You know?
That makes sense.
Dude, we haven't watched the video for a long time. That's funny. Follow them means get information from them. Right now I'm following you. Okay, that's a bit semantical. Now we're just debating semantics, Suresh. But look.
Yeah.
Now you're just being difficult. You're not wrong.
I guess you're not wrong. But would you concede at least what we were saying?
Yeah, would you concede, Suresh, that I am debating in good faith because I have respect, and I have respect for religion, and I'm not saying that the criticisms of Hinduism are part of the fundamental cores of Hinduism. I am conceding that the caste system, for example, is not necessarily a fundamental core of Hinduism, but you are taking every Christian criticism and applying it to the whole religion.
Would you at least concede that there is value and beauty to be gained from Christianity?
There we go. Because if you can't admit that, then we're just at a cross purposes.
Then we
can't really debate if you just deny any beauty of Christianity, because then it just means you're coming from a position of bad faith. Actually, you want to talk about African philosophies that are erased? That was erased by Islam, not Christianity. Much of the African philosophies that had been erased were erased by Islam. North Africa was not colonized by the Christians until much later. The Ottomans had control over like the Barbary states and much of North Africa for most of like recent history, and same with the rest of like Northern Africa and Eastern Africa. So no, you're wrong, Suresh.
Yeah, we lost those traditions and religious belief structures long ago. Yeah, I do believe it is tragic that we lost them.
Of course, but to try to blame, like, do you know when like when you talk about the loss of African philosophies, do you think that Northern Africa was under European rule for a long time? You know that Egypt was a part of the Ottoman Empire, the Ottoman authority, until after World War I. The same for, Libya was only under Italian rule in the late 1800s, I believe, if I remember correctly. North Africa was under the Islamic sphere of influence for most of its history. Only in the past 100, 200 years was it under the Western influence. So you're wrong there, and that's another disingenuous point you're trying to make, and it clearly shows that you're not trying to back up your argument with like actual evidence. Oh, so you're going back to the Sermon on the Mount. See, that's the problem, Suresh. You're not arguing in good faith. You're just going.
No. He said the Sermon on the Mount is good.
Okay. You said it's good. Okay, sorry.
Okay.
I thought.
So would you agree that there is virtue or beauty and value to be taken from Christianity, just like there is from Hindu?
Jews equal the chosen race. Well, according to the Old
Testament. That is Judaism.
That's according to the
not
Old
Christianity. Yes, Christianity is an offshoot of Judaism.
Yeah. The whole point of the New Testament was reconciling
I know a good amount about this.
Laws.
Yeah, so to only son, only path. But what about Hinduism? What if you don't provide the correct sacrifices and the correct prayers to the many gods of Hinduism? What happens to you then?
Islam, last message, and the final prophet.
Yeah,
that's a generalization, but you're not wrong. Those are just generalizations.
Yeah, those are mass generalizations, but you're not wrong, and those are the basic concepts, kind of. I would say Christianity is a little bit more than just only son, only path, but
it's right to a degree. Like, yes, if you
it's right.
If you take the entirety of the religious text, yes, it is right. But I have my own beliefs regarding how I interpret it. The Abrahamic religions have the same God. The Jews have the same God as the Christians, as the Muslims. Like, yeah, sure. But
we all worship Yahweh, right?
But you also have to realize that Christianity is not a product of Western civilization. Christianity is a product of Semitic culture.
Yes.
So literally, you would not have. So Christianity is a fusion of Greek ethics and Semitic culture, because the Greeks wrote the New Testament. So don't pretend that Christianity is a product of Western civilization, European culture. European culture is highly rooted in paganism, actually. And even if you look at some of the morals of Europeanism later on in the colonial period, a lot of those concepts are rooted in paganism. So, in fact, a lot of the criticisms of Christianity and the way that it was carried out can be tied to paganism. Because if you look at, Christianity is considered to be, so like Nietzsche would call Christianity slave morality.
Hold on, that's part of my point. You don't follow any rituals. Nor do I pray to Jesus. But I listen to some of his teachings.
Right.
Same concept. So again, would you agree that there is virtue and value and beauty to be found in
Gimli,
Christianity?
be quiet.
In the same way as there is Sanathan Dharma has.
I don't know enough about Hinduism to agree.
I don't know enough about it either.
Yeah. I'll look it up really briefly just to try to get better.
The thing is, I don't even believe. The thing is, that's a differing point for the two of us, because I don't believe in there being a salvation.
Sure.
I don't think there is.
You have a different point of view than me, and I have a different point of view than him. We all three of us have different point of views. Funny, I just looked up the Santana Dharma, and it's you know how people talk about the swastika in Hinduism, like how it's a Hindu symbol.
Yeah.
I found a swastika on this Wikipedia page. So I'm not saying anything by it. It's just interesting because like the first time I actually saw a swastika related to something that wasn't Nazism, even though I always knew it was rooted in Hinduism and like Eastern tradition, but I've never actually seen it in this context.
Why paganism a curse word? It's not a curse word.
I think there's even value to be paganism is a word. It's literally a set of beliefs. It just means that you have a pantheistic religion.
Like perhaps long ago it was a curse.
Sure.
Perhaps.
But it's not now.
But that's not the world we live in.
Yeah, paganism just means that you have a pantheistic religion that's based upon. So pantheistic religions, for example, you take and this is the same with Hellenic gods, like the Greek gods and like the Norse gods. It's essentially so you have the god of thunder, for example. You have the god of the sea. You have gods of certain geographic, or not geographic, but each element has a god that represents it. So pantheistic religions, if you break down pantheism past its interpretation, it literally just means that like the water is a god, the sky is a god, the ground is a god, and you interpret this into like Greek.
It's very, very similar to the fundamental structure of gods that Hinduism has.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, right? Because it's a polytheistic religion. So paganism is a polytheistic religion because it's essentially each element is a god in and of itself. So like Zeus is a god of thunder. Crazy, you have Thor, the god of thunder as well, right? Although Zeus kind of is like a mixture of Thor and Odin, but so paganism's not a curse word. It's a representation of a specific set of religions that exist all throughout the world. They exist in Africa, they exist in Eurasia, and the Native Americans had pagan gods. It's just a specific type of religion. It's not a curse word, and it's not a criticism. It's just a word. And all I'm saying is that European culture is rooted in pagan identity. Christmas comes from pagan holidays.
Fundamentally comes from Yule.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and Halloween.
Christmas comes from Yule, but it also is it originally with Roman Christians, it didn't even come from Yule. It came from Saturnalia.
Yeah. That's literally like the Romans say, well, can we continue this holiday? We'll accept your religion. We want to continue celebrating our holidays, right?
Yeah, so they just do Jesus' birthday party.
And most cultures that adopted Christianity have their own cultural interpretation of it. So you look at All Hallows Eve, which is November 1st. It's essentially where you pray, in Catholicism at least, it's where you pray for the souls in purgatory that they may go to heaven. So purgatory is essentially the middle ground between heaven and hell. If you're not quite good enough to go to heaven, but you're not bad enough to go to hell, you go to purgatory, and you stay in purgatory until you're good enough to go to heaven. And in Mexico, you have the Day of the Dead. I don't know, say the Spanish.
Días de los Muertos.
Thank you, because I couldn't do it. But that is essentially their interpretation of the Day of the Dead. And in their culture, it's on this day, our ancestors are able to come up to Earth and they can, like, we're going to give them gifts. They're going to be able to eat this food that we cook for them, etc., etc., etc. Coco, great Disney movie. I inspire all of you to watch it. Coco, great movie. But
it was a pretty good. It's pretty.
Yeah,
good.
It made me cry. Like, no cap, I actually cried.
Damn, bro.
Coco.
Good for you.
Thank you. But like, you know, each religion has its own each culture has its own interpretation of religion. So each Christian culture has its own like flair of things. LOL and told like you're talking to a child.
Yeah, Jack's Law is kind of going off in the background here.
I think Jack's Law is on our side.
Some interesting shit.
I think he's on our side.
You've been saying some interesting shit.
Are you on our side, Jack's Law? Because it seems like it, but
I don't know. I can
never tell where you're.
It doesn't really matter what side he's on.
I know. It's just interesting to try to understand.
I've been trying to pay attention to what you've been saying. It just hasn't come up in conversation yet. But
dude, Jack's Law is cool. He's always hopping on these live streams. He's a homie. I appreciate you, Jack's Law.
For him, man.
Don't leave. We like you. Like, this stream wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for you. I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
True. It wouldn't be the same if it wasn't for anyone.
Hitler was no. That's so wrong, Suresh. That is the most fake statement I've ever seen. The Waffen SS literally mandated that each person who became a member of the Waffen SS had to swear their allegiance to pagan German gods. If you wanted to get married as a member of the Waffen SS or as a member of the SS in general, you literally had to get married under pagan rituals. Heinrich Himmler wanted to replace Christianity with German religion, and Hitler furthered this belief. He wanted to replace Christianity with pagan religion, because with pagan religion because if you have Christianity, people have to follow God before they follow the state. With paganism, German paganism,
which has been a huge problem for every society ever.
Right.
Is that Christians, especially, it's like the Abrahamic religions, mandate you to follow God and your religious values before anything else.
Right. Really quick, I don't mean to interrupt you, but I'm going off right now because this is
That's
something
fine.
I'm very knowledgeable about.
Go ahead. I know you're very knowledgeable.
Yeah.
Fucking history buff.
I'm not trying to sound like an asshole. I just want to fucking, because Suresh is this is totally a fake statement.
That's right. You went off on me when I made the same
Sure.
historical mistake, and you went off on me. It's fine.
Yeah, Hitler was not an ardent follower of Christianity. He pretended to be Christian to gain the support of like the traditionalist Germans, but he was not. Literally, if you look at the way that the German state was meant to form under Nazi Germany, they wanted to create a pagan state, because in a pagan state, German paganism is rooted in German identity. Therefore, if you are a pagan, your religion is rooted to the state. Your religion is synonymous with the state. Therefore, if you're going to die for your gods, you're going to die for the German state. Christianity puts your higher purpose and your higher authority in God. Therefore, you can't place the state above God. Therefore, Christianity was not going to work within the Nazi German framework, because in Nazi Germany, they wanted complete subservience to the state. That's why they had the SS pledge their allegiance to German pagan gods. That's why they had the SS get married under pagan rituals. Hitler literally just used... Oh my god. All right, Suresh, I'm not going to have this conversation with you because you're not arguing in good faith. You're being completely... you're rejecting truth. I'm giving you actual facts. Actual, like, we have sides to cross. I don't even know what you're saying, Suresh, because it's just not true.
Trust me, Suresh. I've had this argument with him. He's right.
Yeah,
I've done the research. He's right.
You can say that Hitler publicly supported the church. Yes, he had the Vatican Concordat outwardly, but Christianity was.
But in the same token, I mean, I could say that almost every single Hindu leader and emperor prior to the last 200 years was so entrenched in the caste system, and they continue to encourage it.
Well, even in the past 150 years, look at all the Muslims that were killed on their way trying to get to Pakistan and Bangladesh. Yeah. You know how many Muslims were killed by Hindus with that same thing? So you're trying. First of all, that was actually justified by the religion. Hitler was pretending to justify the religion. He actually was a German pagan in many of his actual beliefs. So, and like, I'm not going to bring that up because that was a wrong way to interpret Hinduism. So I'm not going to use that as an argument against Hinduism. I'm not even arguing against Hinduism. I think Hinduism is a beautiful religion. I think there's a lot of merit to it. I'm not arguing against it. I'm just saying you're not using the same metric for your criticism of Christianity that you are using on your own religious identity. Or I know it's not religious identity because you're technically atheist, but you're still coping heavily for Hinduism.
Aspect. It has to be an aspect of his identity because
Absolutely.
He called himself an atheistic Hindu.
Yeah, Suresh, it's just, look, I want to have a good conversation with you, but I just don't feel you're equipped to have this conversation. I'm sorry.
He does move very fast, Jackson. This is true.
Yeah, I just feel like you are not arguing good faith. You don't have good. You laugh saying Nazi symbol was Hindu. Wow, amazing! You passed blame. I didn't though. I never did. I ever
not do that.
Jared? Did I ever say anything? Did I ever?
No.
No. All I said was that I haven't actually seen the Nazi symbol related to Eastern tradition before because I always see it related to the Nazis. I never said that the Hindus.
But it Nazis is. But he recognized that he knew it was older than that. And he knew that the swastika was from Eastern religion, not from the Nazis.
Yeah, this is the final straw, Suresh, because I never compared Hinduism to Nazism at all. All I said was like, oh, wow, I have not seen the swastika in a Hindu, like, it related to Hinduism before, because in this specific art, this specific Wikipedia page...
Perhaps that's just like a cultural disconnect here. I'm trying to...
It could be a language thing,
it maybe or a cultural disconnect because he probably doesn't see like the way it is in the West. Mm-hmm. The swastika is never attached to anything but Nazism,
right?
Ever.
Mm-hmm.
So for us in the West to see was fluid until British fixed it. No, the British removed it.
I don't know one way or another, so I'm not going to.
To my memory, right? Like, I could be wrong. They fixed it. You fixed it as in making it stagnant because to my understanding of the Hindu tradition, the only way you could move up in the caste was to die and be reborn in a better caste if you served your role honorably and correctly, or by whatever virtue they measured it.
So he's not wrong. The Great Britain did utilize the caste system to their purposes, basically furthering. So I'm not going to deny that, but ultimately, Suresh, what doesn't matter, the reason that argument doesn't matter is the same way that it doesn't matter that the corporations are trying to push climate change to further their interests. You are using a specific argument to further your argument without looking at the actual truth. You happen to get something right, but you're doing it with bad intentions. You're not trying to have a conversation with me. You're just trying to argue against me. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. So it's just we're not going to get anywhere in this conversation, unfortunately, because at the end of the day, you are just trying to prove a point that is, first of all, wrong, and second of all, you don't have good arguments for it. I might give merit to your argument if you had actual good evidence to back it up. But you're arguing in bad faith. You're just trying to argue against me. I'm trying to have a conversation with you. I have given you credit into the beauty of your culture and your religion, but you're not doing the same for me. And if we want to be honest, if we look at the actual practical application today, the practical application of Christianity compared to Hinduism in India, the facts speak for themselves. Which country is more egalitarian? I'll ask you that right now, Suresh. Which country has a more egalitarian cultural social system? Oh my God. Seriously? Let's break your eyes. Churchill was more cruel than Hitler.
That's a fascinating take. Hitler attempted to mass genocide
an entire
population,
entire religious identity. Hitler
killed 6 million plus people.
See, this is why I know Suresh doesn't really care about truth, because just a second ago he was trying to use Hitler as an example for why Christianity is bad, and now he's reverting to Churchill being bad.
I really want to. Okay.
Right. He's just trying to be right. That's all
crazy ideas. What's your argumentation here? How is Churchill crueler than Hitler?
He enacted certain policies that led to like famine in India and.
Famine in India?
But see, this is the thing. Okay. I don't disagree with the arguments that Suresh has. He just his arguments don't mean anything.
Was it a systematic, organized,
not as much as
and intentioned
attempt
to wipe out a genetic and religious and cultural population?
It was more organic. It was more like an organic conspiracy. Hitler literally, if you read Mein Kampf,
like an Irish famine, situation.
Yeah. Hitler literally wanted to exterminate the Jews, especially towards the end of the war. He literally wanted to exterminate the Jews.
That I think is the crazy part about Hitler and Nazism, is that instead of donating resources to the war effort, they took more resources and donated towards the execution and genocide of the Jews.
I never said my identity goes above truth and justice. This is the problem, Suresh. I don't even know if I can continue this conversation, because you are very bad faith arguing right now, and I'm not. I have not done anything in bad faith.
My identity is lower than truth, but somehow your identity is going above
I never said
truth.
that.
I would actually say the opposite. I would almost say the opposite, because you're not. It does not appear that you are seeking truth and seeking negotiation in any good faith sense. While we are sitting here attempting to discuss this with you. I'm trying to take what you're saying in as good of a faith as I possibly can.
What I'm probably gonna do is after I post this video, I'm probably gonna do a clip of like the last hour and just publish that as a separate video, because this was an interesting conversation.
This was an interesting conversation.
Granted, I don't appreciate Suresh's. Suresh has, in very bad faith, argued. He has not made any really good points. He said correct facts. Like, I could tell you that murder is wrong. If I just tell you murder is wrong, did I really accomplish anything? No, I didn't accomplish anything. Right, but that's like obvious. Yes, everything that you said was bad, but does that support your overall argument? No, because I'm not supporting the dirt in Christianity either. I'm not supporting the bad aspects of Christianity. Suresh, it just feels like you're just trying to argue for the sake of argument, and you're just clearly you don't want to have a conversation. You don't want to have a discussion. All you want to do is argue. And I don't appreciate that.
10 lakhs is the same as 1 million. Hitler literally genocided 6 times that.
And he genocided half the Jewish population. India's population in that time frame was about 300 to 350 million.
Like, that's like at this point we're just arguing like who has the worst genocide in their culture, bro.
Yeah, that's a stupid argument.
Why
are we arguing about that?
That's useless. This is redundant.
Yeah, it's just stupid.
What are we doing here?
Like, all right,
because we originally started.
Here's what I advise you to
identity.
say. Go talk to like go talk to somebody who actually suffered. Like, you talk to any, like, you talk to most Jewish people, and they have family members that died in the Holocaust. That's how crazy it was. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It was a monumental thing. And, like, look,
I mean,
I didn't even want to bring up the Holocaust.
one of my best friend's grandmothers was a Holocaust survivor.
Right. The Holocaust, like, everyone knows it was bad. So the fact that we have to try to, like, talk about how the Holocaust was bad, like, why are we having that conversation? You know what I mean?
Or, yeah, not only that, but that the Holocaust is one of the worst atrocities in human history. I mean, very clearly this famine in India was very bad, right?
Right, I'm not trying to
died. That's
say
a
that.
lot of people.
I'm not.
That's horrible.
I'm not saying that these weren't bad things, but he's trying to compare these two things, and we're not even comparing it. His only argument is like, oh, this atrocity happened. That's like me saying, oh, well, the rape of Nanking was horrible, which it was, and that somehow negates all the horrible things that happened to the Jewish people, right? Like, it doesn't. You know, just because one thing happened, because rape in Nanking.
It's like me bringing up the current genocide of the Uyghurs, and you're like, yeah, but the rape in Nanking was real bad, bro.
Right, exactly.
Those Japanese people, real evil about that. That was rude.
See, the thing is, he's just
it's
looking at things
whataboutism.
at this
We're just
point.
doing whataboutism.
Yeah, exactly. This is ridiculous, Suresh. You're no offense, but you probably are one of the worst people I've debated in my entire life. Because you're just saying facts at this point, which aren't wrong, but they don't support your...
I can't say he's the worst. I've debated worse.
Okay, sure, me too. But I'm saying he's one of the worst. He's one of the worst bad faith. He's one of the...
I mean, it's pretty bad faith. Like, this is
I can tell he's smart. He's a smart guy. I can tell that. But he is one of the worst debaters just based on using rationale. He's good at empirical data, but he's one of the worst debaters about using
Maybe we are victims now. How are you equipped to listen to our pain? What do you even mean by that?
What are you talking about? I'm listening to your pain. I don't deny your pain.
But
you are the one that's denying my...
So the thing is, you are downgrading the suffering of another population for the benefit of the suffering of your own population.
Ridiculous. Jesus
it's tribalism.
I don't usually... Yeah, exactly. I usually don't get frustrated, but I'm genuinely frustrated right now because he's just... It almost feels like he's trolling at this point.
Maybe. Probably not, though. Trolling. I mean, he seems pretty genuine. Maybe he's trolling, but, like...
He could be trolling, because, like...
He could be.
At least Jack Slot, he trolls sometimes, but he doesn't do it in a mean way. You know, he doesn't do it in a disingenuous, like, harmful way.
I think we should have I think tomorrow maybe we could finish the video and then have like an open forum in the
Suresh, you can join the Discord and talk. I'd like to talk.
And we all we actually just like sit here and argue.
Yeah, like please come and talk to us, Suresh. Like I invited you to join the Discord. If you really feel confident in your argument, then join the Discord. You haven't. You have not joined the Discord to actually have a verbal conversation.
Even Jeff Law during the Discord and like
I
thought I wrote him off as a troll.
You are avoiding. He's actually joined.
Making sense to me.
Suresh, you are avoiding any actual discourse because you don't have a good foundation for your argument. That's straightforward. You don't. You are probably Googling things right now. I can almost guarantee you are Googling things right now, just trying to find any inkling of an argument against me. I'm not even trying to argue against you. I'm literally just defending my point of view and my worldview, which is not even in contention with yours. Nothing I've said is in contention with you, but everything you have said is attempting to be in contention with me. Do I get mad that often, Stuart?
What?
Do I get mad that often?
No. I mean, you get very passionate.
Yeah, but I don't get mad, but I'm genuinely mad.
I don't think I've seen you super frustrated over something like this. Even when we're disagreeing on something.
But we disagree, we can at least respect each other's point of views. I can't respect his point of view because he's just saying facts at this point without context. Like, I could tell you murder is wrong, stealing is wrong, mistreating people is wrong. But what did I achieve by saying that? Nothing. I didn't achieve anything because I just said things that we all agree upon. I agree that everything he mentioned was an atrocity, but it doesn't support the context of his argument at all in the slightest. And that's the issue. We came here to talk about Jordan Peterson interviewing a presidential candidate, and this has turned into an argument about Christianity and Hinduism.
Hold on. What did you say? Let's see this. I did not downgrade the pain of the Jews. We understand better than you, but you people highlighted so much but ignored all.
Oh, you people! Oh, who's you people? First of all,
relax.
I did not ignore you.
Relax, hold on,
I know,
relax.
That was a little bit of a joke. That was memeing a little bit.
I know, but it was just let's not put jokes into the context when we're already having trouble understanding each other.
Sure.
Okay, here's what you said, right? Here's what you said. Churchill was worse than Hitler.
Yeah.
Right. So what Churchill did by causing a famine that killed 1 million people in India, which is horrible, that is horrific. He said that is worse than Hitler performing a planned, institutionalized genocide of 6 million people.
I think he just found out what presumptuous means today.
He probably knew what that meant. Come on.
I'm being a little bit rude because he's being rude. I'm falling to his level.
I know, but you can't do that, right? You have to remain
Suresh,
level-headed. So,
dude, you need to. I think he's just trolling at this point because you have not said anything like legitimate.
Come on,
so
kiss and make up, you two. Jesus Christ.
I want to. I'm being nice to him. I literally said nothing but nice things about India and Indian culture and Hinduism. He is the one who is like literally going after, like, it's just so disingenuous and like bad faith.
The thing is even if you're accidentally coming off as disingenuous, like
I'm European. I'm not even European. I'm half European and half Asian. You idiot. You just assume that I'm European. Yeah, you are. But you just assume that you people, Europeans. I'm half European. I'm half Asian too. I'm half the same as you. You are an Asian man. I am an half Asian man. So just say you people. Bro, my family, 3 out of 4 of my grandparents were in the Philippines during the Japanese occupation. My grandma and my grandpa had to avoid getting killed by the Japanese. Do I blame that on the Japanese? No, I don't blame them. It's just history. It's just life. And then my white grandmother was also in the Philippines during the Japanese occupation. She was held in a concentration camp. Do I blame the Japanese? No, I don't blame them. I don't have hate in my heart.
Well, hold on. Let's break this out to a more fundamental, logical level.
I'm gonna go pee again.
Why are we simply Europeans? I don't identify as European. It's not what I identify as. I have no national ties, truly. I really don't, to Europe. I could care less. So why is that what you distinguish us as simple Europeans? That's an extremely presumptuous and judgmental thing to do. Because now you're not arguing against our reasoning or our arguments and our logic. You are now simply downgrading us and degrading us to simply Europeans. And you Europeans have done so much horrible things and dismissed so many peoples. And because we have some European roots, I mean, in my case, full-blood, like, European, but in your case, half European.
Yeah.
Ergo, what we say can simply be dismissed.
And on top of that, the European that I represent never had colonies. I am Irish and Russian, like mainly Irish and Russian. They never had colonies.
And
they never oppressed anyone. All right, maybe you not. But I'm saying even my European side, they never had colonies. They never contributed.
That doesn't matter because
it doesn't matter because you yourself didn't do it. And your family themselves didn't do it. Yeah, no, I'm saying
5 generations of my family didn't fucking do it.
I know it's not even if you come from a race or ethnicity that did
colonialism. You couldn't even hit me on being a slaver.
I know.
I'm so white, but you couldn't even hit me on being a slaver. My family very literally fought in the Civil War.
Yeah, mine too. For
on
the
Union. Side of the Union.
Yeah, mine too. They literally came from Ireland, and the first thing they did when they came from Ireland was lace up their uniforms and fight. Oh my God! You keep using bad faith arguments. My family, my white family too, mind you, didn't come here until after the main Western expansion.
Yeah.
So, like, my family never had anything to do with Indians.
Did you ever talk about Red Indians erased?
Oh my God.
Erased, I would assume.
You want to
always talk about Jews. So the reason we brought up the Jews is because you brought up the Jews.
Yes.
So, like, you brought up the fact that, firstly, that you misinterpreted something that Hamilton said. You then brought up that Churchill was worse than Hitler, which implies the things that Churchill did and the peoples that he affected were worse off than the things that Hitler did and the peoples that he affected. I mean, I would agree. Dumpster fire. race is essentially an illusion. But okay, so
race only becomes identity in culture. You can have people that are literally different races and same identity. Yeah, sure.
So at the moment, Suresh, you are playing into a logical fallacy of whataboutism. So we are attempting to like have a discussion and an argument with you over logical reasoning, but you are saying, well, what about this atrocity? Well, what about these group of people? Well, what about this? What about that? What about this other thing? Which is essentially just distracting from the point and clouding the discussion with disingenuous statements and completely alternate topics. Good for you, Jack Slaw. I'm happy for you.
Jeez. Thank you for being the voice of reason, Stuart, because I'm frustrated.
That's right. I've had this... Look, man. Argued with a lot of people who have some crazy beliefs.
It's easier when you can talk in person. It's not just a chat, you know?
That's true. That's true. But... Jack, I second you. So
he identifies as a god. Well, there it is. Okay, you just think yourself as a god. That pretty much. So now I know why you think.
I am merely a man. In an essence, I am my own god, right? Because I don't pray faith to anybody. If you want to like get deep into the concept of what is a god and what is a man and what is identity, then you could get all the way down to the fact that I am my own god because I have faith in myself. But that doesn't mean I am a god or that I identify as a god.
And if you identify as a god, then that sort of that cheapens what a god is, right? Because if you yourself are a god, then being a god is not such a great lofty position, right? It's like saying that everyone's beautiful. If everyone is beautiful, then no one's beautiful. Then what is beautiful?
Everyone's beautiful, no one's beautiful. Right? If everything is good, then nothing is good.
If everyone's a god, if you're a god, he's a god, then no one's a god. Exactly. Then God is just the same as human, and it doesn't mean anything.
No identity sucks. Truth, righteousness, and justice.
You literally said the opposite earlier.
No.
He said the opposite when he says no identity is the best.
I think he's saying that
no,
identity sucks. I think it's a syntax mistake here.
But you know what? You just identify as atheist. That's an identity. 34 minutes. Being an atheist is an identity.
I might be about to get kicked out of the Wi-Fi, bro.
That's fine. We'll close.
I'll let you trying to talk here. So I have to move over to the phone and step outside.
Being an atheist is an identity. That's an identity.
Holding truth, righteousness, and justice as moral virtues makes that part of your moral structure, which is part of your identity.
Defend cruelty. When have we defended cruelty on the basis of our identity? Did I defend cruelty? We did not at all. We didn't defend our cruelty or our mistakes. I
denounced what Churchill did. Yeah. I would not defend what the Americas did.
Exactly.
Not on a moral level.
All we said is that we didn't do it and our ancestors didn't do it either.
I'm also not responsible for these things.
Oh my god.
I think we're talking in circles.
We are talking in circles because he's not really trying to argue anything. In circles.
But this is what happens when you degrade down to what about it?
It's like what Mark Twain says. Debating with like. All right, let me find this quote. Mark Twain.
Go for it. Look it up.
I'm gonna piss off Suresh a little bit with this quote.
Damn, bro. Anyway, so.
All right. Listen.
All right.
Arguing against an idiot is like playing chess with a pigeon. You strategically think of all the moves and you have the intelligence to win, but they will just shit on all the pieces and then strut around as if they've won.
Dude, that's a fucking bad quote. I gotta remember that.
Neither do I, Suresh. I don't banish believers to hell either. Oh my god.
How do I, bro?
So crazy.
I don't believe in hell.
This is so ridiculous.
It's hard to find. For some of us, there is truth that stands out. It's hard to find for some of us, but there's truth that stands out. I mean, yeah, I believe the truth is a thing.
It's hard to say what truth is. You know?
I mean, yeah.
Maybe it's like an ideal. You can get closest truth to possible, but then you never quite arrive at truth.
It absolutely is an ideal. Even on the grounds of scientific truth.
Sure.
It's an ideal. right? That whole pursuit
Gimli,
of ideals.
you gotta be quiet.
We were
Oh my
talking about
god.
earlier.
My dog.
But
it's like 10:40. Come here.
I would agree with you that truth, righteousness, and justice must, like, those are extremely important values for any society or any cultural structure to hold.
Suresh, you are defending your own mistakes because of your unwillingness to question your identity. True. Facts.
Yeah. That's a really good way to put it, Dumpster Fire. That's a really good way to put it.
Another thing, right? So, like, why are we debating, like, things that happen that we all agree are bad? And why don't we debate something interesting, like, what is the nature of justice? What is the nature of righteousness? What is the nature of truth? That's what we should be debating, not
I mean, I had that idea.
that.
So I, like, thought of, like, we should argue about that, like, that was, like, an hour and a half ago.
So you Googled to say I'm an idiot? Good for you. Oh, my gosh. Yes, I am saying you're an idiot. I'm not even going to, like, you literally are an idiot. You are not arguing in good faith. I'm not saying you're dumb. I'm not saying you're stupid. I'm sure you're smart, but you are being an idiot right now. An idiot is someone who rejects truth and rejects, like, trying to cooperate with someone because of their ego. You are so insecure in your beliefs that you're not willing to cooperate. I think he is insecure.
He seems very secure in his beliefs.
But that's insecurity. If you're too secure in your beliefs, that's a form of insecurity. But you're open to learn, but you didn't. Oh my god! Now you're open.
You say you're open to learn, but you haven't been listening to us, like.
Oh my gosh!
This last hour and a half, bro.
Jesus Christ! See, I took the Lord's name in vain. By your metric, Suresh, I'm going to hell, right?
I guess so. You're going to hell, man.
Yeah, I'm going to hell.
Because we can't.
Because it doesn't matter, right? If I make one rule wrong, then that negates the entirety of Christianity. Unless you're a Hindu, whereas the caste system doesn't mean anything, right? We just ignore the caste system completely.
Yeah. Because Hinduism we can find a virtue in, but
Christianity, right. Like, but Christianity is nothing.
I feel like there's like a point. I feel like there's a point about an hour. Somewhere, no, not
2 hours in is when we start talking about this.
Maybe like 30, 40 minutes ago.
Mm-hmm.
I was repeatedly saying, would you admit that you can find value in Christianity?
You never answered.
And then we just got. I'll look for it in the chat. And then we just got sidetracked completely.
Well, the sidetracking is like we're not getting anywhere because he's just saying things. He's not arguing anything really. All he's doing is saying things and using logical fallacies again and again and again. So you Googled to say I'm an idiot. Good for you. Well, you know what? I Googled for a quote, which I knew the word idiot was in it, so I thought of you quite quickly.
Damn,
you know, you remember, you reminded, you know,
I would say you're not helping the discussion, but it's already broken down.
It's broken down, bro. I'm just gonna meme and troll him now, because, like, he's been trying to troll this whole time, except not in a funny way.
Yes, Yates.
Look at your phone. Are you connected to the Wi-Fi?
Huh? Is my phone connected to the Wi-Fi? Yeah, bro. Yeah, I'm on the Wi-Fi. What about it?
Suresh Kumar Pupala. Should add a T to the end a lot. Poop a lot, because you're, like, feeding me a lot of bullshit right now.
Anyway, I'd love to, like, further this discussion another time, but it is, like, almost 11 o'clock, and I need to fucking go to bed. I got shit to do
me too.
In the morning.
I gotta go to bed, too. Yeah.
Anyway.
I mean, but
this was a very interesting
as much as I'd love to hear about the great Christians of history, including Hitler, Stalin, and Mao, the great Christian philosophers.
Yeah, the great Christian philosophers, right?
Okay, so you said Sermon on the Mount is good, but you also criticized it at the same time, so.
Yeah,
but that's basically, instead of awkwardly criticizing Christianity, you should be criticizing your atheist Hindu philosophy in order to level it up. That's true. The best thinkers criticize their own beliefs.
Because you say you apply the same metric to Hinduism, but you literally, I was just asking you a simple question that you could have just answered. You could have just said, like, yes, I find that there is virtue and value to be found within Christianity. You don't have to take...
Here's a good question, right? Do you think that Hinduism is more valuable than Christianity? Or do you think that it doesn't matter? Because that's the question, right? Do you think...
I'm sorry, Dumpster Fire.
I'm sorry.
For me, it's late, because I have to get up at 6
you're even later than us. But... No,
yeah,
like, Suresh, do you think that Hinduism is more valuable as a foundation for morality than Christianity is? That's the simple question. Do you think that Hinduism is more valuable than Christianity? What? I don't know what he's saying, dude. We're kind of...
trying to.
Do you think he's trolling? Because it feels like he's trolling.
I don't think he's.
Because how can you be this ignorant? You know? Because, like, so there's a balance between dogmatism and skepticism.
Yoga.
You can be so much of a skeptic that you just, like, you're not saying anything, you know?
The word that means method, rules, or judgment. It is one of the 6 darshans.
That's beautiful.
Or ways of viewing the world.
That's great.
Okay.
So what?
Cool.
What is your point?
Cool. You know? What's your point?
Jesus Christ. Hey, did you know that, like, Michael Jordan was the 3rd overall pick in the draft? In like the 1980s or whatever.
Bro.
Yeah, did you know that Tom Brady was taken in the 6th round and that he came from the University of Michigan and that he wasn't a highly touted draft pick because of his awkward features and his lack of athleticism and his slow 40-yard dash? Did you know that when you like mistreat someone and bully them, it is actually
in the Old Testament that the Jews were one of the oldest recorded times where people banned adultery?
Whoa, that's pretty cool. Crazy, I didn't know that. Did you know that Suresh Kumar Pupala loves the game of chess quite well? See, yes, there we go. There you go. Thank you for admitting that. That's your belief then, so that's why we can't argue, because you think it's 1,000 times better.
And you do not appear to be willing to...
You're also a hypocrite, because, like, are you a Hindu or are you an atheist? Are you an atheistic Hindu, which kind of negates itself? I don't know, man. You know? I think you're a pigeon.
I assume. You
probably follow the pigeon god. You're a pantheist pigeon, polyistic pigeon.
I assume what he means is that he is an atheist, whom follows Hinduistic moral structures.
Maybe.
Right? That's what I would assume. But then he also mentioned earlier that there was something that gave atheists or non-believers like a path to salvation.
Sure.
So.
That sounds like a cope, but I don't know. But yeah, I follow this specific religion in which I can do whatever I want.
That kind of sounds like the Catholic concept of,
Purgatory?
You mentioned it earlier. Yeah, that sounds like the Catholic concept of purgatory.
Kind of not. Yeah. It's hard to say.
Because where do
guys, commentating is very lag. Is there your... Yeah, it is a little bit lag. I'm not going to deny that. I probably should fix that in the next chat. Crazy, right? Self-criticism that I'm applying to myself. Crazy.
It's hard
Maybe we should try that out sometimes.
Hard to... Well, you also have to understand that you're in India. So it does...
We assume you're in
time
India,
delay.
You know?
I'll take it for sure that he said he's in India, but...
I know, I'm just being silly.
Let's do another good question, Dempster Fire. I really like that. You're just really spitting some facts here.
Yeah.
Do you think reading the Bible could make someone a better person, even if they never identify as Christian?
No, because of the rib of the woman from the flesh, which Suresh talked about earlier. Jokes.
Now, hold on, let him answer.
I know.
Let him answer. Come on.
I know. I'm being unfair. Bible's not good. There we go. That's the kicker. See, Suresh, the whole time you just... No. Let's just be honest. Suresh never wanted to have a good faith discussion. He just wanted to shit on the Bible. That's it.
I suppose. I don't know.
And he didn't even do it in a cool way. See, Nietzsche criticized the Bible in a pretty cool way that you can actually get something out of. Suresh just talked about how people interpreted the Bible. Very, very rarely did he actually talk about things that were wrong in the Bible. And yes, there are a lot of things wrong that you can interpret, but instead it came down to, oh, Hitler was a Christian. Well, actually, he wasn't a Christian. Then it became, oh, well, Hitler wasn't as bad as Churchill. Well, why are we discussing this? First of all, Hitler was worse than Churchill objectively, and second of all, why are we arguing which atrocity was worse? That's just a stupid argument, and is just you're not going to get anywhere with that. That's like saying, what's worse, beating someone up with a crowbar or cutting off their arms? Technically, yeah, cutting off their arms is better, but what's the point of having that argument? Poop pala. I'm just upset. I think the reason why he has so much hate in his heart and so much negativity and ignorance is because he was named Poop. Poop a lot.
Nah, come on.
He took away the T in his name because there wasn't enough characters to put in the YouTube requirements for length of name characters. So his name is actually Poop a lot, but he decided to take away the T because there wasn't enough room left. So it's Poop a lot. Sir Poop a lot. Just like the pigeon, poops a lot on the chessboard. So you can't really have a good chess game with them. He poops a lot. All Abrahamic must be scrapped. Well, there you go. That's your point of view, and that's the thing. You never wanted to have a good discussion in the first phase, sir. Poop a lot. You just wanted to poop on the board like a pigeon.
Yeah, I mean, if your viewpoint is that all Abrahamic philosophy must be scrapped, I mean, what do you say to all the amazing innovation, like literally what we were talking about with egalitarianism? I mean, all of that came out of Christianity and the
Absolutely.
Abrahamic philosophies.
Yeah.
How do you? Well, if you look at the same time, Hinduism did not have that bastion of egalitarianism.
It still doesn't today.
Since the Aryans invaded. Aryans is in the like legit.
Right.
Aryans who theoretically installed the caste system into Hinduism. So, I get it. I mean, like, there are good and bad components to every religion. Trust me, I know. I am not a religious man. But to say that they must be completely scrapped, I would argue that Hinduism should be scrapped, too. Oh, you have Jordan's cards? Dude, that's cool.
Are you friends with Harold Suresh?
Oh, interesting.
Like Harold and Kumar? It's a good movie. Appreciate your contribution
Pupala means...
What's Pupala mean?
Flowers and milk. Interesting.
Flowers and milk? I thought it meant he poops a lot. That's pretty cool.
No, I mean, that was an inaccurate estimation.
Man. Pupala equals poo.
Like, what are like the
whole... Flowers plus milk. Gotcha.
Alright.
You have Jordan's cards? Really? You have Jordan's cards? I have Jordan's baseball card from when he like did baseball for a year. Scrap for what? I want to know now. Anyway, we gotta head out soon, but I encourage you to keep this energy, Sir Pupalat, and have more conversations regarding these sort of things. I encourage you to continue spreading your slightly misinformed arguments and non-contextual empirical data to support your very skewed worldview, which is not really based in any type of reality and simply based on...
I'm holier than thou attitude.
You have the holier than thou attitude. We have never once adopted that stance.
I've been trying to find common ground to you this whole time.
Yeah. So he's just a troll.
I'm done arguing with you, man. Yeah. I don't think he's a control. Perhaps he's just very, very ideological.
Maybe he needs I think you need to go have some fun. Go to a party, Suresh. You need to like be around people your own age and like.
I don't want to completely dismiss his attitudes. He probably has things of value to say. But I've argued with. So like I had a friend of mine. I've told you about him. He's an anarcho-communist.
Sure.
And he literally called me and another person we were discussing with. He literally called us bootlickers.
Right.
And we were like,
maybe we're just bootlickers.
All right.
That's all we are.
I was like, so at this point, like, we can't have a discussion with you.
Right. I think Suresh needs a hug.
Maybe.
I will hug you, Suresh. I still love you. I don't like you right now because you're kind of pissing me off. Hey yo, chill. Anyway, Suresh, I will give you a hug. I love you because you are a brother of the world with me, and I still love you. I don't like you right this minute. Probably expire eventually, and I'll like you again. But I don't like you right now. But I love you. And I want to help you. If you came to me right now and needed some help, I would help you out. And you know why? Because it says so in Christian theology. Crazy, right? I love you because we're all of the same earth. We're all born from this crazy irrational life. I still love you. I don't hate you, even though you were being unkind and I think and just disingenuous and weren't willing to have a good conversation. I still love you. And I hope that we can have a productive conversation in the future.
Yeah,
so yeah.
I hope the same.
Yeah.
I hope we can continue this energy and continue this discussion perhaps another time.
It entertained me. If anything, I was entertained. So.
I was extremely entertained.
Yeah. But I appreciate all the...
continue this another time.
Yeah.
It was good.
Yeah, I'm going to end the stream in a second, but yeah, just thank you to everyone who came out today for the stream. Obviously, the first 2 hours were actually on topic, and the last hour and a half was Hinduism and Christianity. Pretending to be, I'm the warrior philosopher. I just worry all the time. Right now, I'm worried that unsubscribing. Take care. Okay, that's fine.
Right.
I'm gonna miss hearing you poop a lot.
I feel like there was a chance to have a good discussion here.
I don't think he ever wanted to have a good discussion though. Because you already saw the kind of conclusions that he had from the beginning that he finally revealed to this in the end. And those conclusions were he never wanted to reconcile the good aspects of the Abrahamic religions, and he wanted to say that Hinduism was better than our point of view, and he doesn't even identify as Hindu. That's just an individual who's essentially a troll, even if it's subconsciously. It comes from a place of insecurity. It comes from a place of not being confident in oneself. Because if you really feel like you have to destroy someone else's belief system when it's not doing anything to harm you, then that comes from a place of insecurity. And I think he's insecure.
I'm sad that he's unsubscribing, because I think that just shows a limitation on his
ability to converse. Yeah.
I mean, to be fair, you were pretty harsh on him.
I was harsh, but it was only I gave him a lot. You can't deny that I gave him a lot of opportunities to have a good conversation.
That's true.
I gave him a lot of opportunities to discuss things, and he decided to just completely take it in a bad direction. I argued in good faith. Jastrindaram inklabad zindabad. I probably said that wrong, but thank you. I don't know what that means, but
sorry, I don't know what it means either.
All I see is a red flag there, so I don't know if that's like a good red flag or a bad red flag. I gotta look these words up, but thank you. I mean, I'm a linguist, so long live revolution.
Thank you, Dumpster Fire. I try, man. That was a wild.
Still interesting stream. You guys are super patient. Thank you. I mean, I even though like I became emotional in the end, I think I was pretty patient with this guy.
You were pretty patient at the start.
Yeah,
he got very passionate. I think that turned him off.
Like
I don't know.
It turned him off because he knows, like, I'm not going to say he's wrong on a fundamental level, but his arguments were wrong.
Yeah, his argumentation was poor.
Like, you can come... Sorry, what?
There's good argument to be found.
There is.
On what we were discussing.
But he was not using those good arguments.
Yes.
He was just being an
well, when I say good argument, I mean, like, there's good back and forth to be had. There's good truth to be found there.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, there is. Because you can have genuine concerns regarding criticizing Christianity, but if you're just going to like say random facts that have nothing to do with the actual argument, then we're not going to have a good conversation.
Yeah.
So,
that's like, okay. I hope he has a good life.
Yeah, you know me. I criticize Christianity all the time, which is funny, right? But he did not use any single one of the good arguments against Christianity.
It's funny that I end up defending it.
I know. That's how you know that it was bad. That we both were defending Christianity for him.
I'm not even Christian.
I know, right? So, like, that's how you know this is just crazy. Anyway.
All right. Good night, everybody.
Everyone. Yeah. Y'all have a good night. We're going to end the stream
have a wonderful night.
And then I'm going to give Jared a kiss goodnight and a hug.
Oh, thank you.
Because I love all my people, even the atheist. But actually, wait, no. As a Christian, I have to send you to hell, apparently, according to Suresh.
That's true. I must
so, yeah, I guess I'm sending to Jared to hell. But anyway, thanks for checking out the stream, guys. Thanks for dealing with all the drama and the crazy twists and turns.
Hopefully next time we can have some better faith discussions.
Yeah, exactly. Like and subscribe and stay updated, stay up to date. We're going to finish up this video later on. Yeah, I know. So we learned something from Suresh. So we have to thank Suresh for teaching us stuff. So shout out to him, even though he frustrated me. But anyway, Dumpster Fire, thanks for your contribution. Jack's Law, thanks Suresh. Even though Suresh was arguing in bad faith, he provided some content for the channel, so got to thank him. Thanks to Lawrence Abjibit for like providing some cool words, and whoever else was on the stream earlier. Anyway, y'all have a good night.
I forgot what he's saying.
Indeed.
Have a great night.
All right, peace out, guys. Jesus Christ, that guy was crazy.